Don't be scared because you never experienced the trauma these families did. Don't be scared because there is nothing under your bed. But sure, be scared because the paranormal entities which we are going to be looking at in this video might still be roaming around today, looking forward to traumatize a very specific culprit. These cases caught a lot of attention in their time, actually leaving citizens concerned. So chill out, and let's get on with this video. And, just in case, check under your bed. The Doris Bither case, also known as the entity haunting, is a notable instance of alleged paranormal activity that occurred in 1974 in Culver City, California. Doris Bither, a single mother of 4, reported experiencing violent attacks by unseen entities in her home, claims that later inspired the 1978 novel The Entity by Frank de Felitta and its 1982 film adaptation. Doris Bither had a tumultuous past marked by physical and substance abuse, as well as a traumatic childhood. She and her children were living illegally in a condemned, dilapidated house at the time of the reported incidents. Bither claimed that her house was haunted by malevolent entities that not only manifested visually, but also physically assaulted her. She described being attacked and even raped by these unseen forces, with 2 entities holding her down, while a third assaulted her. In August 1974, Bither approached parapsychologists Barry Taff and Kerry Gaynor, who were affiliated with a now-defunct parapsychology lab at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. Over a 10-week period, Taff and Gaynor conducted investigations at Bither's residence. They reported observing poltergeist-like activities, including objects moving on their own, strange lights, foul odors, and cold spots within the house. During one session, witnesses claimed to see a green mist coalesce into a male torso. The investigators captured several photographs during their visits, primarily using a Polaroid SX70 instant camera. Some images depicted light anomalies, such as arcs and streaks. However, analyses suggest these anomalies could result from common photographic errors, including objects close to the lens or accidental exposure adjustments. In the case of the 35mm images, development mishaps might have produced similar results. Skeptics have critiqued the investigation for potential biases and methodological flaws. Benjamin Radford, a noted skeptic, concluded that the case likely involved a distressed family, poor investigative techniques, and confirmation bias. Following the investigation, Bither relocated with her family to Texas, reporting a decrease in paranormal activities. She remained largely out of the public eye until her death in 1999. The case continues to be a topic of discussion among paranormal enthusiasts and skeptics alike, serving as a reference point in debates about the existence of supernatural phenomena. The Doris Bither case significantly influenced popular culture's portrayal of paranormal events. Frank de Felitta's 1978 novel The Entity was a direct result of this case. The subsequent 1982 film adaptation further cemented the case's place in the public consciousness. The video you're about to see is from the 1970s, in which Dr. Barry Taff and Kerry Gaynor are interviewed, discussing the genesis of the entity poltergeist.
Night falls in the city, and with it descends a shroud of mystery. There are ghosts in our city of angels, and there are those who hunt them.
Through the parapsychology laboratory here at UCLA, we investigate many types of phenomena, a good part of which concerns the investigation of haunted houses, ghosts, hauntings, and poltergeist phenomena. This takes up about 40% of our time, most of which is at night.
Come into the lab and people complain about strange things going on in their houses, and we'll generally answer almost any call referring to haunted houses or poltergeist phenomena. And the procedure we go through is to go out and interview the people and try and determine within that interview whether we think they're crazy or not, or whether we think they're trying to put us on, or whether we think there's something worthwhile. And if we think there's something worthwhile, we'll then place ourselves in the environment until we experience something. Once either Barry or I have experienced something, either visual or audible, we'll then try and start a full-scale investigation.
It's said that, or it's believed among researchers in this field, that this type of phenomena is not dangerous. Well, generally this is the case. However, I myself ran into an investigation back in 1970 where I almost met my own demise. It was a house in Inglewood, very close to the Forum, and we conducted a seance there, and it was a great deal of very hard evidence that the house was indeed haunted. Well, one of the people became possessed, and I'll use that term in quotes because it's a very loose term. But he became possessed to the point where the image we were seeing attacking me was that of an old man with gray hair, eyes bloodshot, bulging, yelling, "Get out of my house." He jumped me, he knocked me down, he strangled me. It took 6 grown men to beat him off me, physically. And after he was beaten off me, half of the people present, there were like 15 people, saw the image, this apparition of this large man just fade away, and beneath him was the 25-year-old grandson who brought us to the house.
The major motivation for people calling our lab and complaining about haunted houses is fear. Sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes they want to know just what's going on, but generally they're frightened, and that's why they call.
When I was starting to go to bed, and I sit on the end of the bed and winding the clock, and I know I wasn't asleep because I was sitting there winding the clock. So anyway, I put the clock down, I turn around, and here's this, what would you call it, man, I guess, standing in a kind of a flowing robe type of thing, and I grabbed the flashlight, and I turned the flashlight on, and it disappeared. And this started it for me.
Was this man sort of glowing like
No,
if he was...
no, just like a person standing there in a robe.
And it was
I
solid?
couldn't see any face.
It looked quite solid to you?
It was solid.
It was a normal human being?
Right. Which made me sleep for a year with a light on.
I was in the bathroom at the time. It was like 3 in the morning, and all of a sudden, our hallway used to be tile. All of a sudden, I heard hard shoes going down the hallway. And the first thing I said was, gee, somebody's broken into the house, you know, and I was standing there. I was in the bathroom for about a half hour just hearing clump, clump, clump down the hall, up and down, up and down. Finally get up to Gets enough to look outside, and I turned down, and all I heard was, you know, the moving down the hallway. Nobody was in the hallway, you know. So then I decided that my parents weren't as crazy as I thought they were.
I was giving my little one a bath, and I came out to put the dirty clothes on the bar, and my older son, Skip, was sitting over here, and I went to put him on the floor, and they just took off and just went, you know, and he yelled at his father, "Hey, Dad, look at that," you know, and it just zoomed.
Do these things frighten any of you? Do they scare you at all?
Not really. I think it did in the beginning.
And it's more of a mischievous, prank-playing sort of thing that would annoy you. Would you say more than frighten, or?
Well, I think it's really not annoying. I think it's very interesting.
The original belief regarding poltergeists was that they were basically mischievous, prank-playing ghosts. That's what the German word means. The modern theorists in parapsychology consider a quite different type of belief system is operating here, or phenomena is operating. They believe that there are young children present, pubescent, adolescent children, and the research tends to support this belief. These young children are present with a lot of emotional animosities, belligerence, a lot of very intense interactions. And this emotional interaction will produce an emission of unconscious energy from these children, which will affect matter, objects around them, make them move, affect electrical appliances, make them turn on and off, make things speed up and slow down, affect televisions, affect radios, dishes may explode, furniture may move across the room, cameras may go off by themselves, light bulbs may explode suddenly.
Catching a ghost is more than just an idle dream for Barry and Carrie. They have a plan and a means of enacting it, as you'll see in a moment.
thousands of years, people have been claiming to experience all kinds of strange things. And the experiences under the heading of haunted houses or poltergeist phenomena have generally been reduced to subjective experiences such as hallucination, fraud, dream, illusion. And what we're trying to do is show that there is an objective reality to this phenomena, and we would like to provide hard evidence to prove this.
There is in our world today a type of imaging process or information processing system, I should say, that mimics almost entirely the appearance of an apparition or a ghost. The model that I'm trying to put forth is that of a hologram. The theoretical relationship between holographic processes or holograms and the investigations that we do, ghosts, apparitions, and poltergeists, is that the way these types of phenomena display themselves appear to be similar to holograms, in that they're three-dimensional forms which sort of float in space, and they have all the physical, or I should say optical properties of real substance, but there's no matter, no mass to them. And holograms seem to mimic this type of information theory or process. But the important thing is that when you take a hologram of an object, you make a hologram of an object, that the laser light bounces off the object that you're photographing, reflects off it. Therefore, that if we were to photograph successfully an apparition with laser light, making a hologram of it, this means that something must have been in that space to reflect the light off of. It is not coming from the object, but the light is reflecting off something, which means for some amount of time in that space, something physical occupied it, or else the laser light wouldn't have bounced off it. This type of proof or verification cannot be obtained with conventional photography, and that's our hope, that with lasers and by using holographic technology, we can supply proof beyond the shadow of a doubt that this phenomenon is indeed real.
Proof of another kind was found in this rather unremarkable house in Culver City, where our ghost hunters took photographs that speak for themselves.
In this first photograph, this is a control picture. We have the room with the only available lighting as a candle. We have the occupant of the house, the corner of the room where the phenomenon appears to manifest. Within a few minutes, she said there was activity in the room, the stench was present, the icy cold came in. We took a picture, we got a total bleaching effect here, or fogging. Within a matter of minutes, the same effect disappeared. Another picture revealed a perfectly normal environment, no fogging, no bleaching, as you can see, and we have no explanation for this whatsoever.
Okay, now in the next picture, we felt a cold breeze of air coming through the door, accompanied by a horrible stench, and we fired the camera in the direction of that breeze. We saw nothing, but the camera picked up a ball of light floating underneath the door. In the next picture, the lady screamed out, "It's right in front of my face." Now, the word face is very important because that's the thing that was bleached out. You can see detail in the curtains here, but her face is totally obliterated. In the next picture, which was shot about 3 seconds later, she said that the phenomenon was gone. It's no longer here, and that picture came out perfect.
The photographer at that same seance captured something that no one in the room had seen. An arc of light which literally frames the subject of the haunting. Sometimes the evidence is even more substantial than a photograph.
Without a doubt, one of our most phenomenal cases took place in Pacific Palisades, California, back in 1970. We investigated a house where they were claiming to see a conquistador walk around. They had cold spots in front of their bed. They had objects moving from one room to the other very rapidly, and the conquistador was speaking to them in Spanish. Well, we never observed anything, but many months later, they discovered that their house was on the site of a Spanish burial ground, and they found the bones and they found armor of a conquistador right under their house. And I think that is very, very good verification of this type of phenomenon.
I'm intrigued by the idea that something survives death, and I think that it's a much better explanation than the idea that we end when our body stops. So as far as whether I believe in ghosts myself, let's say that I'm more intrigued by a theory of discarnate intelligence than I am by a theory of poltergeist.
There are places in Britain, in Hawaii, all over the earth, even in this country, that are chronically haunted. And the phenomena does not typify what you call poltergeist. So when you say, do I believe in ghosts, when someone asks me that question, I come up with saying, perhaps. The evidence is very suggestive that we don't stop our physical, with the death of our physical body.
In this high-speed, computerized, technically proficient world, there are those occurrences which resist explanation, posing questions for which there are no universally acceptable answers. Some will say they are caused by ghosts. Barry and Carrie won't say for sure that there are ghosts, but they are determined to unravel the mystery which surrounds those events we label supernatural. Truly high and worthy ambitions in the spirit of night-stalking tradition.
It was a quiet September night in 1961 when Betty and Barney Hill drove through the winding roads of New Hampshire's White Mountains, eager to get home to Portsmouth after their belated honeymoon in Canada. The couple had been married for 16 months, but had never taken a proper trip together. Now, after 3 days on the road, they were looking forward to returning to their daily routines. Betty as a child welfare social worker, Barney as a postal worker. They were an extraordinary couple, not just for their tireless work ethic, but for their deep involvement in civil rights activism. As an interracial couple in the early 1960s, their union was still considered controversial, but they were determined to create a better future. They volunteered frequently, were active in their local church, and were members of the NAACP. But as they drove through the dark, empty highway on that late-night stretch home, something happened that would change their lives forever. Around 10 p.m., after stopping for a quick meal in Vermont, they noticed a bright light in the sky. At first, they thought little of it, perhaps a star or a plane, but as they drove, the light seemed to follow them. It danced across the sky, darting behind trees only to reappear moments later, growing larger and brighter. Barney, a World War II veteran and aviation enthusiast, tried to rationalize it. It couldn't be a plane, not at that hour. A helicopter? Unlikely. Maybe a satellite drifted off course. Curiosity turned to concern. The couple pulled over to take a closer look. Betty raised a pair of binoculars to her eyes and gasped. The light wasn't just a distant glow. It was spinning, moving deliberately. She was convinced it was some kind of flying saucer. Barney was still skeptical, but unease crept in. They got back in the car and kept driving, hoping to leave the strange light behind. Then, on Route 3, near Lincoln, New Hampshire, the object suddenly descended, hovering just 100 feet above them. Barney slammed on the brakes and stepped out of the car, his handgun in his pocket. As he looked up, he saw something massive, almost as large as a jet, but eerily silent, smooth, and flat as a pancake. And then he saw them. Behind what appeared to be windows, shadowy figures in grey uniforms stared down at him. A strange sensation washed over him, as if they were communicating without speaking. A voice, inside his own head, commanded him to put down his binoculars. He tried to lift his pistol, but his arms felt heavy, frozen. A chilling realization hit him. They were going to capture him. Panic surged through his body. He turned and sprinted back to the car. "They're going to get us!" he yelled to Betty, fumbling with the keys before speeding off down the dark, empty road. Then, the beeping sound started. A strange series of electronic tones echoed from the trunk of their car. Almost immediately, both Betty and Barney felt an overwhelming drowsiness. A wave of dizziness washed over them. Then, nothing. The next thing they knew, they were home. Sunlight filtered through their windows. Their trip, which should have taken 4 hours, had somehow stretched to 7. Neither of them had any memory of the last stretch of their drive. But something was wrong. Their bodies ached. Betty's dress had a large tear. Their watches, strangely, had stopped working. Disturbed, Betty spent hours researching UFO sightings and filed a report with the Air Force, fearing exposure to radiation. But it wasn't just the missing time that unsettled. Both Betty and Barney were plagued by disturbing dreams, visions of being taken aboard a spacecraft, of strange humanoid figures examining them. Barney developed anxiety and health issues. Desperate for answers, they sought help from Dr. Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist specializing in hypnosis therapy. Over months of sessions, the buried memories began to surface. Both Betty and Barney described being led up a metallic ramp into a spacecraft where they were separated. Inside sterile clinical rooms, they were placed on examination tables. The gray-skinned beings methodically examined them, taking hair samples, scraping skin, testing their reflexes. A long needle was inserted into Betty's stomach. She was told it was a pregnancy test. The leader of the beings presented her with a star map. Under hypnosis, she later drew it from memory. A series of dots connected by lines, forming a specific pattern. Years later, researcher Marjorie Fish would compare Betty's sketch to real star charts and conclude that it closely resembled Zeta Reticuli, a binary star system 39 light-years from Earth. The Hills experience became the first widely publicized alien abduction story in history. Before them, extraterrestrials had been depicted as friendly space travelers casually visiting Earth. But after the Hills, the idea of alien abductions, missing time, medical examinations, strange humanoid beings, became a chilling new narrative. Skeptics argue that their experience was a mix of stress, exhaustion, and the power of suggestion. Whether you believe it or not, something happened to Betty and Barney Hill on that lonely stretch of road in 1961, and whatever it was, it left a mark, not just on them, but on the way we think about the unknown.
Woman that saw it and wanted me to go down and interview her. Well, a couple days later, her husband called back up. He said, "Forget it." Says she didn't see anything. She says, "I'm a retired military colonel, and it wasn't anything. It was just a military."
I used to have the 45th Air Division. Well, you remember Wayne and Sue Bond? They used to come back here when Pease was out here. He was a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, I think I know who he is.
Yeah. I mean, I had the 45th Air Division here every Sunday morning for waffles and champagne.
And you were teaching them?
And listen, I'm probably the only person in the world who has been paid by the Air Force to go to different Air Force bases and lecture to them on UFOs.
That's what I try to tell people in the government, that the government doesn't know what the government knows.
I mean, when you say government, my God, we got everything.
Okay.
That must be one of the apartments.
Okay, we're going to start now. If you,
I better
okay. Whatever you need to do.
at least put who is that? That's either Daphne or...
I think it's one of those up there,
What's wrong, Sylvia?
Nothing. Got it.
I don't think it was locked.
Maybe that's why I was having a hard time unlocking. Apologize to you, family.
You must be feeling better.
Yeah, I am. How you doing? You got company?
Remember Dick?
How you doing? Yes.
Hello.
Hi, how are
Nice
you?
to see you all. I'll talk to you later.
Oh.
What, video's going?
Yeah, I'm doing an interview with...
Cool.
I left you a note there.
I see it. I'll read it.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. Oh, I'm not sure, but I think Daphne is on her way out today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
She said that she's moving in with some other woman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, Betty, we're set to go. And
oh, I was gonna go comb my hair.
sure, whatever you need to do.
You never met Betty before, huh? Never.
No, so I've absolutely seen her and read the account, and
Her book is interesting. And she don't live that far from you either.
and interestingly enough, isn't it? And it's amazing, small world.
That's the sanest she's been in a long time. Maybe that's the way to control her. Blow my stack out.
Sometimes,
Instead of being polite.
sometimes it's the only way to do it.
Sometimes
Okay.
they're too easy going. So.
And we're set to go.
In other words, scare them so damn much they don't dare to be mentally ill.
True.
You want to shoot yourself? Would you like to borrow my gun? Sorry, you'll have to buy your bullets yourself.
Here we go. We're talking with Betty Hill, famous and first abductee. September 19, 1961, Betty, while driving with her husband Barney, was heading south from Canada
Right.
when very early in the morning he saw a strange light behind the car. It was September 19th. But what time was that, Betty, that this light behind the car appeared?
Well, we would crossed over the border into New Hampshire, and I think we started to see this light following. Actually, in the very beginning, I noticed a bright light in the sky, and I thought I was discovering a new planet until it started to move. And this was about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So we stopped the car and got out to see what this was. We thought it was a plane. So we stopped the car to get out to look at it. And that's when it changed direction and started coming in towards us. Now that was in about the Lancaster area.
So,
And then it followed us for about 30 miles. Paced our car.
and all the while you and Barney were discussing it. What is this? What is that?
Yeah, see, Barney'd been in World War II. He knew planes. And he's trying to identify this. And it's flying in a very erratic manner, which was very puzzling to us. But this is 61. We'd heard UFO. Well, actually, in those days, they called them flying saucers. We had no idea what a flying saucer looked like. But we had no fear, just curiosity. We were trying to identify this craft.
You go on in the road. You decide to pull over. Barney gets out of the car.
Actually, that was in the Indian Head area.
Okay. Am I preceding something here when you encountered alien entities, or was this after?
No, this is the next step.
Okay.
In the Indian Head area, I'm trying to attract the attention of this craft. I'm telling it, come on in. Hi. I got the window down. I'm yelling to it. Hi, hi. Who are you? My cat fell off the stove. And at that point, it left the top of the mountain, came out over the highway, and stopped in midair directly in front of us, maybe about 50 feet in the sky. So Barney got out with the binoculars in an attempt to identify the craft. And when he looked up, he saw a circular window with a bright light behind it, and he saw these men standing behind the window looking down at him. And at that point, the craft began to descend. And he became frightened. Ran back to the car saying he thought they were trying to capture him. So we got in the car and we went speeding down the highway to avoid capture. And as we're driving along, there's beeping sounds. It sounds like something was hitting the trunk of the car, and the car vibrated. And then we drove along for about another 30 miles when Barney turned off onto a side road, and here were the group of men he'd seen on the craft standing in the middle of this road, blocking our way. And naturally, he had to stop the car. And they came up in two groups, took us out of the car, passed in the woods to where the craft was on the ground.
At that point, strange thoughts started going through your head, thoughts that weren't your own. Did you have some sort of telepathic communication with these entities, or?
All our communication was verbal.
Verbal?
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. They spoke English in a limited way.
Huh.
Like, a foreigner coming here and not too well acquainted with our language.
But in the same time using common colloquialisms of the day, like you'll be back in no time or something of that ilk.
Yeah, well, in the very first part, they had us under some kind of control. And I brought myself out of this, but Barney was only able to bring himself out, partly out of it. So that I was just as conscious as I am right now.
They walk you into the craft up a ramp. The landed craft. This is right off Route 3. Well, actually, you didn't know where you were at that point. And,
yeah.
But
it was right off from Route 3.
So they walk you up this ramp. You're brought in, and what did they say they were going to do with you?
Well, when we got up to the door, I was not going to go in. So I socked him.
You punched the entity.
Yeah. In fact, I put up such a battle that my dress is badly torn. And he said, come on. All we want to do is some simple tests. And as soon as the tests are over, we'll take you back to your car and you'll be on your way.
Let's just go back to those type of entities. They were your classic alien, gray-shaped, cat-like. No, they weren't. Okay.
They were a form of human being.
They were a form of human being.
Right.
Did they have cat-like or Cheshire-like eyes?
They had larger eyes than ours, smaller nose, and smaller mouth. No protruding part of the ear and no hair. But they're people.
Nothing like these classic grays you see your Whitley Street.
I don't know. I've never seen those. I don't know what they're talking about.
Sure, okay. There was a leader.
We gave them different names to identify him. Now, I don't know if he was the leader or the interpreter. But we called him the leader. And then there was the one who did the testing. We called him the examiner. There were 9 others who stayed out in the corridor, and we called them the crew members.
Okay. So you're on board. Do you remember what you saw when you entered the craft? Something must have taken you aback, saying, this is amazing, or what type of craft am I inside? Can you describe as to what you collectively remember?
Went in to a corridor, and then I was taken into a room, and I had to step up because the level of the floor was above the corridor, and it was an oval-shaped door like we would see on a ship.
Do you remember at that point, did they specify what their agenda at that point was? Were you going immediately in for the examination, or?
They had taken us strictly to actually, they wanted to find out how we were like them or different from them physically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you feel that you were chosen for this, or you happened to be in the wrong area at the wrong time, or the right area at the right time?
Well, now I figure it was the right time in the right area. But I think I brought it on myself. I'm waving to him and yelling to him and hey, who are you? And
You get into the examination room. You're separated from Barney.
Right. He's taken into the second room.
Your examination, and again, all this comes out in later dreams and hypnosis, but immediately do they remove your clothes and perform? What happens? You'll have to. I'm tainted by all the popular lore of abduction stories.
I don't know anything about those stories.
That's good. Well, you're better off.
But I was taken into this first room, and it was quite bare. There was a small table. There was a stool, and then the wall. There were doors in the wall that would slide back and forth. And they put me on a stool, checked my eyes, ears, nose, throat, my feet, my hands. And then he put me on a table and said they were going to check my nervous system. and they used some kind of equipment to do this. And then he tried to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel, which caused pain, so they stopped doing it. And then the examiner left and went into the room where Barney was.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe what was happening to Barney, what Barney recalled under hypnosis? What was going on at the same time in his examination room?
With Barney, most of the exam was the same as mine, except they were interested in his bone structure. I mean, they were feeling all up and down his spine, his arms and all, basically.
Did Barney recall any struggle akin to the struggle that you had, where you had a torn
No, because
grip?
they had him under this control, and he wasn't. Was very upsetting to him because he couldn't move.
Mm-hmm. So they had implemented paralysis, some sort of temporary paralysis on Barney to subdue him, whereas to you they gave you a little more leeway as far as you weren't.
Well, I'm small. I was smaller than Barney, so I didn't get such a big dose apparently.
So they saw him as more of a fear, perhaps.
Right. He was bigger than them, taller.
Your examination concludes. Then what happens?
Well, while the examiner is in doing Barney's exam, I started talking with the leader. And I said, I know you're not from this planet. Where are you from? And he showed me a star map. And he explained part of the map to me briefly. And then we just talked about food and different aspects of life here. You know.
And what?
Actually, what led to the food was the examiner came running back into the room where I was and started tugging at my teeth. And he wanted to know why Barney's teeth were removable and mine were not.
And the story is Barney had dentures.
Yeah, during World War II, Barney got too close to a hand grenade and knocked his teeth out.
And they were totally confused by
that.
All
was very
this.
puzzling to him. Yeah.
And humorous.
Yeah.
Any other instances that something that as a human you took so general as a characteristic that you never thought of it, that they got confused by, almost childlike, akin to the denture incident?
Yeah.
Was there anything else like that they seemed that, boy, you don't know that you can recall?
Well, they were sort of disappointed. I didn't know anything about the solar system.
Okay.
That I think they really expected me to be able to identify the map.
They were actually upset that you didn't recognize their home. Let's go to that. Marjorie Fish, months later, or years later, actually.
Years later.
Under hypnosis. Tries to induce you under hypnosis to redraw that
No,
story?
no.
Okay, maybe you can go over that.
Dr. Simon, at the time.
Benjamin Simon.
Dr. Benjamin Simon said that during the week, if I wanted to, I would be able to remember the star map, and I would sketch it. But I was not to think about it. I was just to let my hands go ahead and draw it, which I did. And that was in 1965.
4 years after the incident.
Now, in 1969, Marjorie Fish came here and stayed a few days and asked me all kinds of questions, hours and hours, which she taped. And then used that to go back home and
Took
did
your
the
map.
research on it and identified the areas.
The area of the star map, which she said was in the constellation that we know, Reticulus, in the star system, was Zeta
Reticuli, yeah.
And from that point, do you remember them mentioning Zeta Reticuli, or is that a terminology that we as Earthlings have given them? So,
I would have no idea
re-
what their name
Okay.
is for their home planet.
and do you remember what type of star system? Was it a white star? Was it a yellow star? A red giant? Do you recall what type of star or anything?
It's, I don't know, but I do know that our astronomers believe that the stars on my map were the ones most likely to have planets and have life, as we know it.
And so they may be younger stars, hotter stars.
Actually, we're believed to be 4.6 billion years old.
Or 20 billion. It seems that we
But
age a billion years every 5 years. So.
But actually, Zeta Reticuli, we believe, this is a belief. We don't know for sure. But we believe it's about 11 billion years old. So there's a lot They've been around a lot longer than we have.
Twice as long, and then the chance to evolutionize, to project. So this puzzling incident, you're examined. You get a tour of the spaceship
No.
or the craft. Did
No.
they show you anything? It's just only on a need-to-know basis.
Just the one room I was in.
The interaction with you and the question and answer session was more than Barney. They did not give Barney the opportunity to inquire.
No. No, there was no conversation with Barney. I enjoyed myself. I had a great time.
Mm-hmm.
He joked. We kidded.
Really?
Yeah. I invited him to come back. I could say, please, please, please come back. Oh, I have so many friends who would love to meet you.
So this was not a traumatic experience at all. It was an enlightening experience.
Oh,
spiritually uplifting,
right,
perhaps.
Right. It was. Nobody can tell me there's not life on other planets.
At the same time, it seems that 36 hours after the sighting is on record, according to Jacques Vallée, that at 2:14 a.m., Pease Air Force was tracking an unknown object.
Oh, yeah, I told him that. Pease Air Force Base released the radar report where they tracked this craft. It's like 2 planes out to check it out, and the reports of the pilots are still classified, so we know they just saw it.
To the skeptic, that kind of knocks them out of the water. Then, if for you to guess, if this were a concocted story, boy, you know your stuff. It's a pretty well orchestrated event to have Pease personnel involved, and that Betty and Barney, Barney was a postal worker.
Yeah.
Postal worker. You're involved in real estate, and that you pulled off a grand hoax through the Air Force. It's nearly impossible, if not impossible, absurd, I guess is the term I'm looking for. You're released from the craft. You get back into the car. You check your watches. Why?
Well, I don't think we checked our watches until we're almost home to see what time it was, and both our watches had stopped functioning.
And you could not account for some time elapsed.
No, we realized the trip had taken much longer than what it should have. Maybe about 2 hours.
Were you feeling woozy? Did you have a headache? Did you have any physical? Were you just exhausted? What can you describe what your feeling was?
We've been driving all night. We got home about 5 in the morning. We're calm, we're relaxed.
Oh, so you weren't...
Feeling very well.
You didn't feel traumatized or injured at any time or should I say violated at that time?
No.
You go in the house, and I guess is it the next morning you check out the car and
find this.
And what happens when you look at the car?
Highly polished spots in the trunk of the car. And that day, we were getting tropical rains from a hurricane that was going through, and it was heavy downpour, and didn't affect the spots at all. They stayed there for months.
Your sister, who claimed to have seen a UFO, suggested that you do what around the car?
Oh, she talked to a physicist who said go out with a compass and check out the spots, which we did.
What happened?
And the compass was very, very erratic.
Almost spinning, or
yeah,
just...
it was, and we tried it on different other parts of the car, and it didn't react that way.
But just near where the spots were.
Just the spots.
Hence the inference being a magnetic anomaly.
Yeah.
Something was really distorting the magnetic draw of the compass. Yeah. At that point, afterwards, do you contact CUFOS, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, or what is the sequence of events?
No.
Just Walter
First of all, we didn't do anything.
Okay.
And then NICAP in Washington.
Okay.
I wrote to them because I wanted to know, being exposed to a UFO, close range, was there any health problems? Were we exposed to radiation? What kind of dangers?
They dispatched Walter Webb as the representative.
That was later.
Okay. Yeah. So NICAP has that. That letter winds up on the files of the Center for UFO Studies with Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
It might have, I don't know.
You never ever communicated with Dr. Hynek?
Oh yeah, we became good friends,
Oh, really?
but that was years later.
Okay.
We did numerous TV programs together.
Okay. What was your feeling on Dr. Hynek? Was he obviously a thinly veiled skeptic?
Oh, no. He believed every word of it.
At the end?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, as soon as he met us.
Sure. I think that his take on the UFO phenomena when he was humiliated with the swamp gas incident, have to trot out an absurd explanation for an event in front of a college dorm, I believe, in Michigan or near the Great Lakes. That's when he said, all right, enough, that he saw that the government was masquerading, or at least trotting out disinformation and misinformation on the UFO phenomena.
Because when he first started, he was working for the government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Hynek and you were great friends then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Great.
And I know Minnie, and I believe Dr. Hynek's son, there's a son who used to, I don't know about now, you live down here in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. So, you're having some troubling dreams now. Is that what happens at home?
Oh,
after the
actually, 10 nights after this happened, I had a series of dreams for 5 nights. Each dream was different, which later I found out was a recall of what had happened.
And the dreams were depicting what you just described to me. At that point, what do you do? Is Barney troubled by all of this? Is Barney...
No.
Has his life pattern changed? Has his mood changed at all? Or
actually...
Any physical...
Well, the first thing I did was during the next day, I wrote down what I could remember of my dream.
The following day, which would be the 20th.
And every time I had it... No, I didn't. It was 10 nights after.
So we're talking the 29th, 30th, roughly.
Yeah. And I made a record of these
38
dreams.
years to the day. Okay.
And then I took and put them away. Mm-hmm. And then later, several months later, I talked with my supervisor about the meaning of dreams.
And
then she said, well, maybe it happened.
And suggested, or did she connect
we just talked about it.
So, Barney, I mean, life's going on as usual. You did mention it's not that you had these total memory blockages of what happened, but you knew it would happen, but it wasn't dramatically affecting your lives. You're curious more than anything.
Curiosity.
At that point now, Walter Webb, representing NICAP, comes. Does he get involved in the picture?
He came and interviewed us a couple of times.
Interviews you. Walter's a very highly esteemed researcher, one of the original.
Yeah, but see, actually, I would say 3 weeks after this happened, the United States government got involved.
Mm-hmm. Did you notice anything strange? Odd vehicles around your home? Were you followed?
No.
Your prototypical Men in Black. Did you see any of those?
No, they called us from Washington.
Said
they heard about our experience, liked to meet us. They were scientists. They had an interest in UFOs. And so they came, and we had continuing contacts with them for years.
So
the United States government. One time we even got together and camped out with 26 of the top scientists in this country, and Jacques Vallée was one of them.
Wow. So there was no subversion or subterfuge going on with the government. They were straightforward out of curiosity, and then no one was mocking you or highly skeptical.
Oh, they were looking for information.
You know, and because this was a highly unique case, and it represented a different genre in the UFO phenomena, whereas it was a close encounter, I guess, of the third kind, or would you call it a fourth kind, where you were abducted? I know that those are the classifications given by Dr. Hynek.
But I know
it was a landed craft. You saw occupants and you went on board it.
No, and the men who got in touch with us were from the White House, National Security Council, NASA, and let's see. Yeah, these were the top government.
Big dogs.
Right. And the first thing they said to us, stay away from the UFO organizations.
And I'd like to reemphasize that to anybody listening at home today. Oh, good for you. You're your own person.
Right, they said, we want to know the facts. Mm-hmm. And we don't want you even with the possibility of being influenced by something else. Mm-hmm. So stay right away. And I always have. Mm-hmm. And I still have contacts.
It gets to the spring of 1962. Problems start happening with Barney. What's going on with Barney?
Barney started his blood pressure was fluctuating, and he was having anxieties. Well, see, Barney was working the midnight shift, too. So he's driving to Boston, South Station, every night. Had to be there, I think, midnight. And, he's getting home, getting through, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. He's trying to sleep during the day, and everything just built up. And he got sick physically. Mm-hmm.
lack of sleep can compound itself.
Yep.
At that point, did you equate that to the incident of September 19th? Did you think it was directly related? Was
Nope.
he having any sort of nightmares, or was just he just couldn't get his sleep?
He couldn't sleep, and he was like, he was before we started going to Dr. Simon, he'd leave here, start to drive into Boston to go to work, turn around and come home. And he'd just say, I can't do it. I'm too exhausted. I don't feel good.
Enter Dr. Simon.
And then, no, he wasn't, he was going to his regular family doctor who's prescribing medications and all, trying to treat him, and he's not improving. So his doctor thought maybe he had some kind of emotional problem that was preventing him from healing. So he sent him into a psychiatrist in the same office building he was in. So Barney started going to Dr. Stevens on a regular basis, talking about his childhood and his mother and his father and all. And one day Dr. Stevens said, what did you do this weekend? And Barney told him we went up in the White Mountains looking for UFOs. And then Barney told him, and he's the one who referred us to Dr. Benjamin Simon, who had been one of his teachers in medical school.
Dr. Simon puts both of you under hypnosis, records...
Now let me get straight about hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
What you hear and what you see is stage hypnosis. We had medical hypnosis, which is the kind that's used in surgery.
Medical hypnosis, it's a highly trained psychologist or doctor as opposed to a charlatan with a watch dangling back and forth.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And Dr. Simon, at the end of World War II, had been the director of the Mason General Hospital in New York City for the treatment of servicemen coming back from World War II who had emotional problems. And he was so highly successful using medical hypnosis that the U.S. Army did a documentary of Dr. Simon's work. And in the beginning it was 2 hours long. But then, in 1980, around there somewhere, they shortened the film to 1 hour, and it was shown at public PBS stations, and the name of the film is Let There Be Light. And if you could get a hold of it, it is one of the greatest things you ever saw.
So this man has a lot of badges, I guess, in the
field Dr. Simon?
Of psychiatry, but he's not somebody that would lead questions. He's like you said, he had brought a lot of men out of battle fatigue that were emotionally scarred in combat,
yeah.
And the casualties in World War I alone of shell shock.
Yeah.
That men, if they had been treated by trained physicians, and they could have been saved and almost been brought back to normality.
In this film, there's a serviceman who's brought in a wheelchair. He cannot walk. Now, he'd been hit by shrapnel, and all had been removed. There was no reason in the world why he couldn't walk, except he couldn't. So he's lying on the bed. Dr. Simon puts in medical hypnosis, and he says to him, get up and walk. He says, jumps out of bed and walks. And he's walking around the room, and he goes over to the nurse, and he's crying, and he's saying, look, I can walk. I can really walk. Dr. Simon puts him back in the bed, brings him out of the hypnosis, and the first thing this patient does is he looks at Dr. Simon, real worried look in his face, and he says, do you think I'll ever be able to walk? And Dr. Simon said, I'm sure you will. And at the end of the movie, it shows him outdoors playing baseball.
So Dr. Simon could help people will their way through agony.
Right.
This is brought to the public's attention in 1968 or 69 when a movie is made. When you were known, obviously, through newspaper accounts, but you were brought worldwide, I guess, publicity or maximum publicity when the movie was made.
No, in 1965, reporter from a Boston newspaper heard about our experience, and without ever meeting us, published it for 5 days on the front pages of the newspaper. It went all over the world at that moment.
Without having met you, he took
never
liberties.
met us.
He took liberties with the story, and there were some inaccuracies.
Yep.
Like what's
Well, he was pretty accurate. I was amazed. I still don't know where his source was.
Can you do you think that maybe one of your government contacts had leaked this information to him and had orchestrated somehow to get this to the public consciousness?
I never thought of that. I don't know.
Okay. What myths do you want to dispel about your encounter and things that they fail to mention? Either they fail to mention when people think about the UFO incident with you and Barney, and what are some myths that you'd like to dispel about that? If you can think of any liberties. I've learned some stuff, for instance, tonight. I always thought that they were almond-shaped entities with the alien. You said no, they were very much human-like. They spoke to you verbally as opposed to telepathically.
Right. And we had a great time.
And you had a great
time.
time.
And if you wait a minute, I'll go get Junior so you can see what Junior looks like.
Okay, sure, absolutely.
Oh, John?
Yeah.
She's got a picture hanging on the wall over a bed there that I took of a UFO out of your neck.
Oh, okay. Damn, that would make a nice cut.
See? Another thing.
Oh, okay. Junior. Fascinating.
Another thing, I never called them aliens.
What did you call beings? What was
Astronauts. I called them what they were. Astronauts.
Okay, sure. That's what they are. I
Right.
mean,
So this is Junior. Now this is a sort of a composite of what they look like. There's individual differences. They do not look alike. There's as much difference among them as there is around any group of people. But this basically shows the characteristics. The larger eyes, nose, mouth, no protruding part, no hair. But this is because he fell off the podium in St. Louis.
Oh.
And cracked his head.
Oh, okay. So, but he's okay though. But he has a pronounced brow ridge.
Yep.
As you said, a pug nose, more or less a very small orifice for a mouth. And actually, instead of whites, actually have yellow eyes and eyes. I see irises and a pupil.
We put the yellow in
Okay.
to emphasize them.
I was going to say he needs Visine or he looks like he has malaria, but okay. But,
Okay, now, Junior has been evaluated by, I don't know how many physical anthropologists, but what he looks like now, if we continue along the path of evolution, this is what we're going to look like in 25,000 years.
And would we be mammalian, reptilian, or insectoid, or a combination of the three? I mean, because if you look at the way we're on our way with the nuclear, there was a nuclear exposure in Japan, for instance, and radiation causes mutation. And if you look along the lines of evolution, we lost our appendix, for instance. People say we'll lose our little toe because we don't need it.
Yeah.
The brain capacity gets larger. You become more spindly because we don't need muscles because it's mind over matter. Correct? Is that the?
No.
No. Okay.
We're gonna be like we are now, except, I mean, look at mankind. It's been around for, what, 2.6 million years?
Depends on who you talk to, I guess. It's so subjective. So
well, they've got the bodies.
so that's basically what the astronaut looked like.
Right.
Can I ask you something? When they put that needle back on board the craft, they put the needle into your navel. Some have speculated that perhaps they were taking eggs or ovae, or no, you don't think so?
No.
Because some have projected that. Isn't it interesting if you correlate that with test tube babies years on?
Yeah. Well, because at the time this happened, doctors said, "Oh, it's absolutely impossible to put a needle in someone's navel. It would probably kill them, or they get infections." And then I think the process was developed in a hospital down in Houston, Texas.
Shortly afterwards.
Yep.
Did they perform any function like that with Barney then?
Nope.
None whatsoever.
No.
See,
There
another
was
myth
absolutely
dispelled.
nothing sexual
See,
at
and
all.
that's another myth dispelled because there was always that overtone in some of the accounts of your story. So it's good to get that clarified. And
And absolutely no sexual. In fact, we're having these different methods of producing children. Maybe we won't have any sex in 25,000 years.
yeah. Or maybe of us, well, I won't go there, but it's even tough in 1999, let me tell you. I want to ask you about, after this incident, you are catapulted into the limelight. Not only are people relaying similar experiences. You start hearing from people who have similar experiences, and you're probably saying these people are imagining it on one hand, others are very legitimate. Did you start hearing?
First of all, as soon as our experience became known, we became a central point for people to report sightings. And then after the movie, the UFO incident, then we had people, because the movie was in '75, and that was after Barney's death. They were calling me saying, "Oh, I think I've been abducted." And so then, as a social worker, and I use Dr. Simon's formula, when people tell weird tales, it can be hallucinations, delusions, fantasies, or something, they're recalling something they've seen, heard, or read.
Mm-hmm.
And when you rule out all those, you may have the truth.
Mm-hmm. And they can't use the using something you had read. People tried to equate that you had taken from the Villas-Boas case, which happened 3 years after your incident in 1964, which is an absurd and an impossibility for you to predict 3 years in the future as to what an event would occur. Villas-Boas, for people listening at home, was a Latin man who was abducted or claimed to be abducted by a spaceship and was, I guess, sexually accosted by a female alien on board a spaceship. And skeptics like Phil Klass, if you want to go after Phil right now, you can.
Phil isn't that important.
You know.
I always tell Phil he only talks that way to try to make money on my reputation.
Let's go there for the skeptic. I'm known as a paraskeptic. If you believe, I probably don't. If you don't believe, I probably do. I amalgamate my theories from both schools of thought. You're both right, you're both wrong. There are some on the far end of this alien culture that have these impossible stories that I cannot comprehend. And then there are the absurd, closed-minded skeptics who will denounce anything without even giving the possibility that this instance could be real. I think that if I come upon something that's unexplained, my job's complete. I'm looking for hoaxes and I'm looking for misidentifications. Let someone else figure it out.
Now let me say this, as far as abductions, there are real, honest-to-God abductions, but they're not known to the public. I know probably about 12, and most of them involve 2 or 3 people. And 50% of those people who have been abducted are in the emergency room at the hospital within 4 to 6 hours.
Because they're convulsing, or?
No. They have breathing difficulties. They lose their sense of balance. Their eyes won't focus. They have different. 2 men in Maine had I think it was brown and yellow marks around their necks, around their eyes, different parts of their body.
Was this the Allagash incident, Ray
Oh,
Fowler?
no.
So they're traumatized. So what you're saying is abduction, the ones that aren't readily known to the public, they're very almost violent occurrences because the physical traces left over, the physical repercussions.
I mean, there's something more than just saying, "Oh, I think I've been abducted." They've called the police and said, "Take me to the hospital."
You don't consider yourself an abductee, but a passenger. And I think that's refreshing. A tour. You don't. Do you consider yourself an abductee?
No.
Even though popular literature points to yourself and Barney as the first abductees because you were the first to.
I call it. We had a meeting.
Mm-hmm. So after,
Columbus came here, and the Indians met with Columbus.
A cosmic caucus. So the movie comes on. You're a clearinghouse for information. A lot of people are coming to you, some with stories that you can't believe, others that you see that they're truly traumatized and victimized. They ask, what can you do to help me? You probably answer, I can't do anything except you can only take consolation in others who have shared your same experience. Was that your advice? That's my advice to abductees.
Well, if anybody comes to me and says, I think I've been abducted, the first thing I say is, stay away from UFO investigators. Do not have hypnosis.
I'm going to get a t-shirt with that on it.
And then, if you've really been abducted, you'll begin to remember it yourself. You don't need anybody to tell you. And you will begin, and you will gradually remember the whole thing. Such as John Salter, who was teaching at the college in North Dakota. And he got in touch with me and said, I think my son and I have been abducted. Both of them are college professors.
Mm-hmm.
Only his son was teaching in California, and father's teaching in North Dakota. And the two of them would get together and they're going to Mississippi on this trip when it happened. Well, they come back home and they're separated, and both of them begin to recall exactly what happened. No hypnosis, no nothing. They remembered the whole thing.
The UFO investigators start calling you, but the government's calling you. The scientists from all branches of, like you said, military intelligence, I'm sure universities, everybody's got a solid scientific inquiry. There's no skepticism at that point because of your sincerity and your consistency of testimony.
Well, for, I don't know, about 5 years, I guess it was, I did college lecture tours, which was a lot of fun.
Sure, meeting the young people, the young minds.
And then, you see, I invited the UFOs to come back, and they did. Not here, but as a few miles from here. And we went out, we had volunteers, we covered the area almost every night for about 15 years.
Okay.
And we had scientists, we had labs with testing equipment, we had the military, we had half the people who lived in town observing, and we got loads and loads of information about UFOs. But we also got hundreds and hundreds of pictures.
Sightings, because over a 15-year period in southern New Hampshire, you orchestrated watch groups.
Right. We had all these volunteers, and when I did the college lecture tours, I used about 85 different slides of UFOs. But not just UFOs, UFOs doing different kinds of things. Like a carrier with 9 discs coming out of it. I mean, I had a $89 movie camera.
And you have a film of a mothership.
Actually, what I did is I sent the movie film to a friend who's a psychiatrist, projected the movie film onto the screen, and then took his camera and snapped slides. And then I showed the slides in my lectures. And I got, you know, people don't realize what a huge variety of different kinds and shapes of UFOs there are. And also, they usually travel around in a squadron of between 150 and 200. So if you see one UFO, keep looking. There's an awful lot more. They don't travel around alone. That's why the military doesn't attack them.
How many different types of entities or races of people? Let's, for instance, you met somebody from Zeta Reticuli.
Right.
How many different space entities? Are they all from Zeta Reticuli? Are they?
I have no idea. All I know.
Many? Is that the term?
All I know is these crafts are flying together in squadrons.
Okay. Usually.
They're all together.
Emanating from the same.
I don't know where they're all
system.
coming from.
Okay. And they travel in squadrons, and this is only based on visual observations that you've taken personally. How many UFOs, for instance, have you seen, do you think? It's impossible. Hundreds, we'll just say, right?
Thousands.
Thousands, okay. And you can't see them on demand, but you have a sense as to
We have
where
to
they
know
would
where they
appear.
go.
Okay.
Okay.
Anticipating.
Would you like to see a picture of a landed UFO?
Sure. Oh, I'd love to, yeah.
Okay, I'll go get it.
I'll keep Junior right here company. All right. Junior is the clay model or plaster depiction of the entity that Betty saw on September 19th, 1961. Betty, as far as the UFOs, what's the largest one you've ever seen? Motherships we've heard a mile long. Do you believe that? I'll have to ask that when she comes back.
Most UFOs are small.
Most UFOs are small. Small, say the size of what, an automobile, the size of an airplane?
About the size of a car, a little bit bigger.
Okay.
But usually when people say, oh, I saw this huge one, actually what it is a lot of little ones hooked up together, flying in a solid mass. Okay. This is the landed one.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you can actually see pods or 3 legs,
Yep.
let me point it out right here, of the craft. So this is a landed UFO, New Hampshire.
Yep.
No?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Looks to be at dawn or dusk, or is that's the light being
Dusk.
given out by the craft?
Yeah, it's beginning to get dusk.
So you're looking more or less west
Yep.
for that photograph.
Yep.
What year was that taken in?
Well, sometime in the 70s.
In the 70s. Which,
Okay, this one would come in every night and land.
same spot or generally
Yep.
the same vicinity?
Same general area. And then others would come in, fly up to this one, and then go off. So I always call this one the headquarters. This is where they come in and get their orders for the night.
What town? Just give me a hint. I know you don't want to sell out where your place is. Or...
Sorry.
Okay, good. All right. I tried though, didn't I? I did try. We're gonna have, all we can say is southern New Hampshire. That's all
Yep.
we can say about that.
And also, this one has, actually there's about 14 lights. And they're all lighted. But sometimes they'd only have 2 or 3 lights. Sometimes they have red lights, green lights. See, you could see the legs on it.
You almost had a feeling to go of where to go for this. When you had your group together, you had an inkling, is that what I'm getting now, that you had an idea of here's where to go. If we hang out here long enough, we're going to see them. And no, okay.
No, driving to my mother's house at night, coming home from her house at night, usually Barney and I would be paced. We'd have a UFO on each side of the car. And then they'd go ahead of us and we'd follow them. And they led me to this spot.
Do you have a feeling these are the same entities that originally abducted you on September 19th?
I don't know. But I assume they knew them.
So you,
I assume they had some kind of record.
all right, what, just from the same squadron, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so those UFOs land, they just land. Obviously, you didn't walk towards it and try to touch it or get close. The idea was just they'd land, here we are. If you want to take your photos, take them now.
Actually, if a person tried to walk towards it, they would come up and dart towards the person. And scare the person to leave. Or sometimes they'd just take off. But usually they just sit there.
When was the last time you saw a UFO? This being 1999.
I looked out the window the other night and 2 of them was flying.
Wow.
But it was a very, very poor sighting. I could tell it was a UFO because of the altitude and speed and lighting.
What do you think about cloaking possibilities? I've heard stories that I could be standing next to somebody that sees UFOs and I can't see them if I'm not at a certain angle. Do you...
If you can't see them, I'd suggest you have your eyes checked.
Okay.
You need glasses, baby.
Yeah, okay, so in other words, that they when they make themselves appear, they appear to everyone, not just to certain people.
Right.
Okay, so there's nothing to do with this new age vibrational rates.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay, good. That's another good thing that I'm going to put on the T-shirt. Let's talk about now. You get catapulted in as the UFO authority. You're invited abroad. Tell me about Europe's reaction or Soviet Union's reaction in how you were treated and who you met, etc. If you could maybe just give me a brief overview of, say, when you went to Europe.
I've even been on TV in China.
Okay.
In this flight, a filming that was done here was sold to China, and they had somebody speaking Chinese for me. Also, same thing up in Montreal. I'm speaking French. Everywhere I go, I'm speaking the native Japanese.
Just dubbing in the voice.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say that this phenomena is worldwide, or is it just the interest is worldwide, or have you heard from all remote parts of the earth of people recounting similar incidents to yours? How would you describe this phenomenon?
Well, it's worldwide, naturally. Like, I mentioned that my son was retired Navy. Well, he was stationed in Japan for many, many years, and he had a Japanese wife. And then he got transferred to this country, and this was in the 60s. And she brought with her publications about UFOs from Japan. And I still have them.
Wow.
And half the article is in Japanese, and the other half is in English.
Huh. Yeah. So let's look at the UFO phenomena. They're increasing. The government obviously doesn't know what they are, and that's why they're coming to Betty Hill, first-hand witness. They're trying to learn just as much as everybody else. So the government has to tap into the UFO subculture and the UFO researchers as to gleaning information. That brings up my next thing about Roswell. UFO crashes. I have the opinion that there are either no flying saucer crashes or there's an entire litany. You can't have just one. What's your take on UFO crashes and on Roswell?
My opinion, that one UFO crashed because a little lieutenant came out and made a public statement. And no little lieutenant comes out all by himself and does that. He's got to be cleared from the top.
We're talking about Walter Hout, the press information officer at Walker Field and Roswell Army Air Base.
And he came out and said it, and so it happened. Then the Pentagon came in and said, oh, no, 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 no.
No, 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 meaning you shouldn't have said that, or no, 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 you're totally wrong.
You see,
let's forget about
it. Let's take a good look at the American public. If they came out and said UFOs are flying here, everybody would be saying, they're violating our airspace. Shoot them. Right. If you don't like them, you don't understand them, you kill them. Right?
That's right.
That's the American way of life. I really think the government is protecting UFOs.
Well, let's go take one step further. The government, I think the window of opportunity for disclosure of UFOs' existence by the government has closed. And like you said, because the public would say they've been flying in our airspace all along. The next Congressional Defense Budgetary hearing, they'd slash line item after line item and cut their budgets, number one. So there is no defense against them. They have not shown to be an aggressive phenomena. They could have shot down our fighters. We have the Thomas Mantell case. We have a case in Australia, the Valentich case, where people unfortunately encountered UFOs and disappeared or had some sort of craft malfunction. These instances are going to happen. Hence, that the
case in Australia. A friend of mine was in Australia when that happened.
The Valentich case, 1975 or 76.
A friend of mine was in Australia when this happened, and actually met with the parents of this man. I think he was 19 years old, 20, something like that. So now we're out in the area where the UFOs are, and we're yelling to them and asking them to bring them back to us.
And you were asking, pleading to bring them back.
And they're actually coming right in close to us, like they were trying to hear what we were saying.
Well, so you are a center or focal point, or somehow you tend to attract UFOs. Is that if Betty Hill wants to see a UFO and puts her mind to it, UFOs will come?
No. But sometimes I say that I think it's almost like a atmospheric change of some kind. I can be sitting here, and I can UFO go over the window, and there it is.
Okay, so you have a feeling. There's something, an urging.
Maybe it disturbs the air currents or something in a way that I recognize.
Just briefly, back to Roswell. So your take on Roswell is, did that incident happen or not, or is the point moot? It's not even worth discussing?
Oh, I think a UFO crashed. Yep, and I think it was recovered. No, I don't know if bodies were recovered or not.
Well,
but I think a craft was.
Well, if bodies weren't recovered, it was either A, remote controlled, or B, they were picked up by a safety rescue flying saucer.
It could have been, okay, because we had a UFO crash here.
Where's here?
In my area.
In southern New Hampshire.
And I went out there and all the people running, UFO crashed. Oh, maybe we ought to call the military. Maybe we ought to call the police. And I said, no, go home and leave them alone. If it crashed and there's anybody alive on it, let the others come in and rescue them.
Can I ask you where this happened and when?
Very close to the picture.
Southern New Hampshire again, that's all we'll get. But what about what time, what year, it's something like this? And does CSETI know about this, that has a catalog of flying saucer crashes?
This was never reported.
And guess what year?
And the next day, I went out with a neurosurgeon from Pease Air Force Base, thinking that if it crashed, and if one was killed, they might have left the body behind. And we searched the whole area. Because if we could find the body, we're going to bring it back and put it in my freezer. And he was going to do an autopsy. And then we were going to call the whole world to come in and see it.
That's right. Ray Santilli included, the British guy who...
But we didn't find any bodies.
So...
But we did find where it crashed.
What year was it?
I don't know.
60s, 70s?
70s, I would say.
Okay, so do you remember when the people were coming running out of the woods, did you see any object impacted? Did you see any
I didn't see that, no, but what happened is when the UFO, okay, this man is stopped at a stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
And the UFO came crashing right straight down.
Mm-hmm.
Just missed his truck.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went along through the woods, and it cut the trees right off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this place probably 25 feet wide. And this is what everybody's running after the UFO, following where all these trees are crashing down. And that's when I got them all to come back and go home and forget it.
So, UFO crashes are frequent then?
Well, I think probably quite often a craft malfunctions, and then they get out and you repair it and take off.
Do you think the military has ever shot down a UFO? Leah Haley in Pensacola, Florida claims to have been on board and abducted by a UFO that was shot down by an electromagnetic pulse beam weapon by the United States Air Force in Eglin Air Force Base. You don't buy that at all?
No. I know that they shot a piece off from a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And they send it outside this country to be analyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And the scientists in that country were not able to analyze it. And so the scientist took it and packed it away up in his attic. And in 1975, the CIA called and said, send it back. So they had to go up in the attic. It's sputtering. Got to go up there and go through all those boxes, get that damn piece out, send it back.
Mm-hmm. Parts are coming forward now to the International UFO Museum in Roswell, some claiming to be of extraterrestrial origin. Some has been traced back to just some China or pottery maker in Denver, Colorado. I saw the pieces of debris. It looked to be some sort of piece off a bumper of a Volkswagen, in my opinion.
Oh.
You've got the charlatans, the hoaxers, that are going to come forward and say that this is a piece of a UFO when it is indeed is not. And then you have other pieces of material that have an odd metallurgy to them, an odd atomic and isotopic structure. So what you're saying...
Oh, I've had stuff analyzed that I've picked up from UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the stuff, no matter what it looks like or feels like, the puzzling thing is it dissolves in water. That they can't figure out.
Mm-hmm. Almost, is it gelatin-like substance?
Oh, no, it just falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it melts like.
Do you think that UFOs are seen over military bases more, over high mineral content areas more, over anomalous magnetic areas? What's your take? You mentioned prior to going on the air here about them emanating from the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, well, here, because we did have Pease Air Force Base, but we haven't had it since the 1980s sometime.
Mm-hmm. Pease was a Strategic Air Command
right.
depot. There were nuclear weapons on site.
Yep. And the UFOs used to come in over the nuclear weapons, and the MPs used to go out with their blue lights flashing, and then the UFOs would take off. And the police would leave, and the UFOs would come back. So after a while, they just left them alone.
Early on, so this was frequent at Pease Air Force Base.
Oh, yeah.
So early on, I'm sure they scrambled fighters, but after a while, they decided that it was just a waste of time, and that.
Well, sometimes they'd send planes up to just follow them, see where they're going, what are they doing.
But not in an offensive attack posture, just in a reconnaissance posture.
I think just looking for information. I don't think Pease went around shooting at them.
So,
everybody in New Hampshire would be screaming.
That's right. They call attention onto themselves. So Betty, they come. Do you agree then with that assessment that UFOs are seen over sensitive military installations that deal with nuclear weapons, high mineral content areas?
Here they follow rivers.
For navigation.
They follow rivers, and they used to follow railroad tracks, but not so much now because we don't have that many railroads.
So they did need lines of navigation.
Right.
Okay.
And our pilots have told me that maybe the reason they come in here so often is when they're flying in, and you look down and you see Cape Cod, the shape of the land.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other place in the world with the land shaped in that pattern.
That's correct.
And so maybe that's why they come in here. It's easy to identify.
From outer space.
Right?
Let's talk about the alien subculture. I've seen the alien interview film that supposedly emanated from Area 51, where they have this bulbous head entity Frankly, it looks like one of Jim Henson's mutated Muppets, but they have this bulbous entity in this enclosure, and some sort of scientist or doctor trying to communicate with this entity. It has a convulsion and collapses. You've seen the Russian flying saucer crash footage that came out on TNT a few years ago, along with the Sverdlovsk midget, which was a cadaver apparently recovered by the Soviets, and then you have the famous alien autopsy footage. So,
okay, I saw the one of the small craft that crashed in the Soviet Union. I saw that on TV where they recovered the bodies.
Right.
I believe it.
So you believe in aliens. My take is if there are UFO crashes, then there have to be occupants. If there are occupants, some have to be dead, some have to be alive. If they're dead, then they have to be autopsied. If they are autopsied, you can bet that the military is going to film them. Hence, there is autopsy footage. The question begs, is the alien autopsy footage that was circulated 4 years ago by Ray Santilli, do you believe that to be authentic or not? Do you know?
Actually, that body looks more like the astronauts than any other pictures I've seen.
Very good point. I never correlated that, but that cadaver looks very similar to, what's our friend's name again here?
Junior.
Junior, yeah. It does look very similar to Junior.
In fact, we saw a UFO person that looked very much like the one in that film.
Where did you see this? On board the craft?
Yeah.
When you were taking, okay. So
and I think in the film they said it was a woman. And the autopsy.
Right.
Well, see, if you really look at them, there's no way to tell male from female.
They're eunuch almost, neither male nor female.
I mean, how you gonna wear earrings if you don't have protruded body ears?
Sure, that's right. They'd be hurting your cheeks, wouldn't it?
Right, and no curls.
That's right.
If you have no hair, you have no curls.
No need for conditioner or rinses either.
Right.
So let's talk about government interference. Government has never interfered with your life. They haven't stalked on you. In fact, they've been just the opposite. The government has been kind to Betty Hill, always inquiring about information, cordial, never threatening. I want to talk to you about Men in Black. These are supposedly secret government agents with agendas or aliens trying to manifest themselves in a human form. What's your take on Men in Black? Have you ever seen them? Have you ever talked to anybody that's encountered Men in Black?
I've met a lot of Men in Black, but they're never any threat.
Okay, so
and they're nothing to do with UFOs.
Okay, so that we just spelled out. I ask you about USOs. That's unidentified submerged objects. Do you think that UFOs can go underwater?
I know they can.
Elaborate on that, please.
They go underwater all the time.
Because it's a great hiding place. They won't be disturbed.
Well, no, I wasn't there, but down here in Wallace Sands, the beach, Sunday afternoon. And this report came from England. There was a man there, apparently a UFO investigator, visiting someone in this area. He's down on the beach. The UFO came along, died down in the water, and then later came up again. And the beach was crowded. Hundreds of people saw it.
Wow. There was an incident in New Hampshire where I believe around the time of your, now I want to say maybe the late 60s, where something plummeted through the ice of a lake, which caused a stir and a commotion. Do you recall that incident?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that as to what you recall, or were you involved with that?
I'm trying to think of the man's name. He lives right up the street from my cousin. But I heard it and I called him. And then other organizations were calling Peace to get information, and they were telling everybody to call me.
Okay. So in other words, it was a cold winter's day. An object plummeted through the ice of a lake in New Hampshire.
This man was a contractor.
An odd green foam scene or something to that effect.
This man was a contractor. He built houses. And this is the middle of a blizzard. Heavy, heavy snow, 20 below zero temperature. And he's standing looking out the door when he sees that this pond, the ice is melting at 20 below zero. So he went out and saw that there was this rod at the bottom of this little pond.
And I believe a green foam or something like that, or it's odd bubbling or nothing?
Oh, he just saw it down there and he was so puzzled. So he thought, well, he'd go get something and pull it out. And then, he got a rake and told me he got out there and he looked at it and he said, what if it's electrical and it's in water? And I got a metal rake. I could get killed.
Sure, electrocuted.
So he said, well, he'd wait and see what happened. He went back in the house, and later a friend came, and he showed it to his friend. Now his friend called the police or somebody, and that's how they got involved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the governor got involved. Everybody roped off the area, and
Meldrum Thompson, I believe, was
Yeah.
the governor at the time.
and they claimed they couldn't find anything. And other people claimed that they actually saw them take this rod-like thing out of the water and all.
Have you been to the Nazca lines in Peru? Those are the depictions
Yeah,
on the
haven't
Peruvian
been there.
plains, the desert that supposedly are runways or chariots of the gods. Eric von Daniken, who I'm sure you've met and spoken
Several
with.
times.
Several
We had a
times.
bottle of wine together
Oh, is
one
that
night.
okay? All right. I had a beer with Stan Friedman. He's the Roswell researcher. So,
Stan Friedman was one of the first people not the first, but besides the ones from Washington, Stan was the first one we met who was not government connected.
a nuclear physicist, itinerant
Yeah, I
nuclear
think it was
physicist
out
at the
in,
time.
Barney and I were going to do a program, Phil Donahue show, and I think it was Dr., I'm not sure, Pittsburgh, and then Stan heard we were there and he called us and came by and we met. Yeah, and we still keep in touch.
You've been to Gulf Breeze, Florida, Pensacola, which is the site of Hurlburt Field, which is special operations, highly trained military operatives they're independent of the Army and Air Force. There are some of our highly skilled troops. You've got Eglin Air Force Base, highly sensitive installation.
Fort Walton Beach.
Fort Walton Beach, you know it. Pensacola Bay, and hence we have a man by the name of Ed Walters, November 1987.
I've been there.
Starts taking pictures of these odd crafts. People are saying they're hoaxed. I've spoken with Ed Walters. The jury's still out, in my opinion, on Ed Walters. A group forms called the Watchers. They sit at Shoreline Park looking over Pensacola Bay, Santa Rosa Sound every night and see what people say are UFOs on demand. I take the trip down to Gulf Breeze. I sit with these people, and they're oohing and ahhing at these red lights. I said, look, there's a UFO. I said, no, that's a plane, a taxiing plane on the way into Eglin. Well, what about that one over there? I said, near the radio tower? They said, no, right there. And I said, that is the radio tower. Another one, woman says, we see these red lights traveling along the surface of Santa Rosa Sound. And I said, like those ones out there? She goes, there you go, UFO. And I said, they're car tail lights. You can see the car driving out. So I've sat with these watchers, and they cannot identify an aircraft, let alone a star in the sky. I think people they were desperately wanted to see UFOs, and they got them, but they got mundane phenomena. What's your take?
Unfortunately, I don't think anybody. I saw the original tape that Ed Walters made of a UFO. It was a UFO. Now, I don't know about any enlargements or any of those things, but I also saw the spot where the UFO landed, left marks in the ground.
I don't have a beef
Now
with,
this was
with Walters.
Okay, first of all, I have friends that lived at Fort Walton Beach, and I go down and stay 3 or 4 or 5 days. Well, I would go down there, and people would ask me all about UFOs. And I would say, if you see a UFO, do what we do in New Hampshire. Take your camera and film it. And Ed Walters did.
Mm-hmm. And this footage was spectacular. The Watchers, meanwhile...
The original filming was not spectacular. It was just a plain, ordinary, red, glowing UFO.
Yep.
And it landed in the schoolyard.
And then
And it left marks.
And then the definition of the object took shape in the photographs.
Okay, now the enlargement. I've never seen a UFO, that kind of UFO.
And if people,
but it could be.
People tried to claim that Ed Walters hoaxed it, yet there are other people that, unbeknownst to Ed Walters, that were seeing the exact same type of craft in the sky at the exact same time that Ed Walters was.
You know,
so, in my opinion, Walters could be the victim of a hoax, but he was not the hoaxer.
Look,
that's my opinion.
I talked with people. If all you got to do is go to Pensacola, go back to old newspapers, 1950, 1960s, and you're going to find all kinds of reports of UFOs. They're not new there. They've been there for years.
That's right. Now, and again, I call Pensacola, Eglin Air Force Base, Area 51.
I've been at
Area
Eglin
51
many times.
Gulf, though, I call it because it's a sensitive installation. We've got the Gulf Test Range where we run missile runs, torpedo runs we ran in World War II. we trained our pilots out there, but it's a sensitive area. And again, getting back to if UFOs are visiting, they're going to go to where the party is, where we want to know where the entertaining people are. You'd be over Los Alamos, you'd be over Sandia Laboratories in Albuquerque, you'd certainly go to Eglin, and you'd go, as we mentioned, Area 51. What's your take on Area 51, Betty? Do you think that they're hiding down?
I don't think that's UFOs.
Okay.
You know what I think it is?
And
I think it's when we captured planes from other countries and we're testing them out. We did it at Area 51. Also, the last thing I read was that area was so polluted with radioactivity that they moved everybody out.
So you and I think alike in that respect. I think that there are black aircraft like the SR-71, the F-117 stealth fighter, B-2 bomber, and there are red aircraft, the Operation Red Hat. They run red flag games out there whereby they take their enemy's aircraft, the Soviet Union MiGs, and they test them. They want to find their Achilles heel, their weaknesses, so you continually... So why not put up a UFO story? Yeah, we got flying saucers here when the real agenda is we've got Soviet aircraft.
Right.
Moreover, we've got a lot of Soviet aircraft, and if you could imagine if they could deploy those aircraft in an arena of combat under their enemy's colors, there you go. So the government, that's why they never sought to quell the talk about UFOs. They just didn't want you to look at the base. You know, you can talk about UFOs there.
And it also, if it's polluted with all this radiation,
sure. I mean,
it also could be a health factor.
There were a lot of nuclear shots out there.
Yep.
I mean, it's still cratered to this very day.
Yep.
So we basically, in this interview, taken a walk across America, discussed Roswell, Gulf Breeze, Area 51, hotspots of UFO phenomena. Do you think the Great Lakes is a hotspot for UFOs? Do you believe in something like the Great Lakes Triangle, for instance?
I know there's a lot of sightings. They follow waterways.
Do you have any...
They go up the St. Lawrence River.
Can you equate UFOs with, say, instances in the Bermuda Triangle, or are they two separate and distinct phenomena?
Oh, I think they're separate and distinct.
Crossing into other areas of Fortiana, like, say, let's just talk sea monsters. You've been to Loch Ness.
I've been to Loch Ness.
Beautiful place, myself included. You went probably to Drumnadrocket, which is the little hub of the loch. Did you ever see anything strange? Did you see a UFO near Loch Ness?
Nope.
Nothing.
Nope.
Just a beautiful loch.
Nope.
No sort of...
And we went on a tour. We went all over England and Scotland and Wales and
But the
Ireland.
the UFO phenomenon is very deep and entrenched in the UK, in the United
Oh, yeah.
Kingdom. They're seeing them just like we are.
Yeah. In fact, I just got a card from a man. He's the national director of Mensa. You know the Mensa?
Sure, Mensa, yeah.
Yeah. He's the national director of that in England.
I
And he's also involved in UFOs.
was a member, let's talk quickly about UFO groups. I was involved with BUFORA, which is the British UFO Research Association. I'm a dissenting member of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. I tend to think that MUFON collects all the UFO reports and sits on them, as if, I think out of greed, that they're going to either slip us the answer one day, or that how can we put this into a database and make some money. And I've known a lot of people that have sent reports to MUFON trying to get information on it, or have a researcher meet a dead-end door with old Walter there, and Walter's retired, nice man. But there was a cloak of secrecy, hence that I think that MUFON is a government agency for UFOs. What do you think of that?
No, because I don't think they get enough valuable information.
Yeah, I agree. So MUFON...
Yeah, I know. I've met Walt. And John Schuessler, who's going to take over. He and I've had contacts with each other. In fact, I think John Schuessler was there when Junior fell off the podium and broke his head.
Okay, so
And then Dwight Connolly, who's taken over as the editor of MUFON, has been here. You know, I mean, I have contacts with these people.
So these UFO organizations are subjective in nature. Each state with its own little agenda on how you'll see your UFOs and what your UFOs will look like. That's the idea I got. Dealing with MUFON people, they're set in their ways as far as what happens. Some are so bizarre and out there in the field that you don't know what to believe. So you've got that. That's where the science breaks out in fissures. You've got individual organizations with their own individual perception of what a UFO should or behave like.
And they don't. You never know what they're going to do.
So it's a massive game of pin the tail on a donkey, and a lot of people are getting poked in the you-know-what.
Yep.
Because people are feeling for the answers. Everybody seems to think that they have the answer, when in fact, maybe we all have a certain piece to the phenomenon. Have you ever seen Bigfoot, Betty? I'm in one of the things that I research of Bigfoot in the New England area.
No, I have never seen Bigfoot. However, I think maybe he might have run through my mother's yard one night.
In southern
From-
New Hampshire.
Yeah, because the whole ground shook. And we kept hearing this little noise, and we thought, it's too big for a bear. So we picked up sticks and we're hitting the ground. That's what you do to keep a bear away. Oh, that's what, I don't know. I never met a bear face to face, but that's what we've been told.
So you would not equate them with UFOs, Bigfoot?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Oh, please.
I
Digress.
think, now I say this, now basically, I think Bigfoot is of this planet.
Okay.
But there have been reports of a UFO landing and one footprint by the door of the UFO. It's a Bigfoot. And there's only one print. So it's like he put one foot out, looks around, gets back in. I mean, something's got a huge foot.
So these cases of the equation between Bigfoot and UFO phenomena at least have to be considered.
Right.
Because if you look at mainstream Bigfoot research, they denounce any sort of paranormal influence or association with Bigfoot or UFO equation.
Or if you're riding around in a UFO and you want to clear the area, drop down Bigfoot for a few minutes.
That's a great idea, sure. Stick the place out or scare you out, run you right out of the area. I'd like to conclude this interview, and I want to thank you for taking the time. You've been very informative, and you really opened up my eyes and really set yourself apart from the other abductees. I've interviewed abductees. I've interviewed a woman that after she went through hypnosis, and we mentioned that earlier in the interview, how dangerous hypnosis can be as a tool if it's in the wrong hands and implemented, and can psychologically scar an individual. But she was digressed, or regressed, I should say, and had a UFO experience. Now she won't even open her closet door or look under her bed, because that's where she claims the UFO entities tend to emerge from.
Well, that's 3-year-olds got the monsters in the closet.
What advice would you give to UFO abductees? When I talk to people that have seen a UFO, they say, what can I do? And I say, nothing. Should I go to the police? No, because you'll bring scorn and ridicule, and they're not going to help you anyways. And they'll just write you down in the book, and you'll have the cruiser drive by, not because they want to protect you from a UFO, but this guy must be nuts. What my advice is for other people to, that these people should form some sort of support group. Share their experiences with others who have similar experiences, and perhaps you can have consolation and you can have that type of support within your own. Would you agree to that?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, I tell them, if you think you've been abducted, don't tell anybody.
Okay.
Stay right away from everybody, and in time you will remember. And then once you remember, then you will know what to do. And you're not going to need a support group.
Okay, good advice. Good advice indeed. So the abduction phenomena, do you see the abduction phenomena? If you look at UFO sightings, they started landing in the 50s. Yours was the first abduction account in the 60s. People taken on board saying that there were sexual tests performed on them. Now there are women that said that they've been claiming that they've been pregnant, and that I call it intergalactic womb snatching, whereby they said they were pregnant.
Nurses will tell you that almost every woman of childbearing age at some time or another has what we call the missing baby syndrome.
The false pregnancy.
Right.
That you
The
think
false
that you're
pregnancy.
pregnant, and your body gives you the signs that you're pregnant.
Yep.
God, I'm lucky I'm a guy. Sometimes when I don't. So you're saying that this agenda, are they stepping up their agenda? Are they making drones? Are they making half human, half alien entities?
How can they? You can't mix a dog and a cat together.
Okay.
You
We're two
can't
separate
mix them in
species.
people.
And if they are astronauts.
And just because of the shape of us, there's no sign that their internal organs are the same.
So you don't buy into that then?
No, I don't.
Okay. In concluding the
In fact, in the real abductions that I've worked with, there has been no sexual interest at all in any of them, man or woman.
It seems that they just want to scare the bejesus out of them. Is that what you're saying? Because the trauma.
No, they're searching every real abduction. They're looking for different kinds of information. The testing they do on this person is totally different from this one, from this one, from this one. It's looking like they're looking for information for themselves. Well, I keep repeating the same old tests over and over again.
Dr. Jacques Vallée has a great adage. We have to understand that we may not be able to understand. Do you like that?
Well, my book. Common sense approach to UFOs. Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney Hill.
What's the address? If they wanna buy it?
953 State.
If they want to buy it.
Yep.
Okay.
Jacques Villay loves this book.
It is a common sense approach. You do take a common sense approach to UFOs.
Right.
You don't look at this upon this as an evil phenomena. You look upon this as an interesting phenomena.
Right.
This is,
I mean,
they're astronauts. They're explorers. They're just
They're
like somebody coming
explorers.
from Spain to New Hampshire.
Right.
They're tourists,
Right.
basically, aren't they?
Yep.
Are
They're
there-
looking us over. I mean, let's face it. Why would any advanced civilization want to get friendly with us?
Right. But in the same
We're
token,
not really very, we're still quite primitive, you know.
if you look at the prelude, the order of battle, and I don't like to say that, but you send recon. If you're scouting out an area, before I buy a tract of land, I scout it out with the wife. Do you think that they have eyes on our planet? Do you think that they want to mine our planet and that this planet would be better off run by them and not by us? And moreover, if we were disposed on like fleas, a case of fleas on this planet, do you think that their intentions are malevolent?
I think they wouldn't take us as a gift.
So you're saying is they like the planet, but they don't like what's on it?
I mean, I think they're trying to decide what level of evolution we're in.
Where'd you go
And
wrong?
when are we going to go progress?
Mhm.
Is every year we get worse rather than better?
Do they have their eyes on the planet and its minerals?
Not to my knowledge.
Have they assisted the military in developing third, fourth, fifth generation aircraft? Have we made a quantum leap in avionics due to alien intervention?
I think we've had advances in our technology based on things that we've obtained from crashed UFOs.
So
like fiber optics.
Okay, Philip Corso was the one who wrote The
Right.
Day After Roswell. All of
I
this,
agree with him.
unfortunately.
In fact, I know two people who did an analysis of the stuff.
Well, unfortunately, I can't find holes in his story. He is who he says he was. That's no denying.
Because the only difference I would have is he seemed to think that the UFOs were a threat to us.
I know he made
But
a lot
this is military. Anybody violating our airspace could be a threat.
I know the Materiel Command at Wright-Pat were all nervous, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, when this book came out, because that was one of their own. Coming out under secrecy and obliterating his oath, and there wasn't anything they could do to him.
Yep.
So that there was some sort of confluence of alien intelligence or alien inventions that were subtly cast into the industrial mainstream and brought to fruition through fiber optics, through night vision goggles, through super strong alloys, through maybe some sort of an exotic propulsion system, perhaps. So, do you believe that we are flying exotic aircraft out of?
No.
Okay, that we don't have the capability.
No.
Do you believe that we perhaps have a string of lethal satellites orbiting the planet that may be, in fact, not there to shoot down intercontinental ballistic missiles, but are in orbit, say, to...
shoot down UFOs?
There you go. Do you believe that that's possible?
Oh, I think we might attempt it, but I don't think we'd be successful.
So, in other words, before we fight, we're going to train. And that's the way the military looks at it. If they cannot take on an opponent and defeat it, then they're going to go back and into the drawing board until they're ready to have that technology and take down these UFOs. Do you think that that's in the government's agenda eventually, is to shoot them down and leave us out? Is the sake of our species at stake here?
No, I don't think, first of all, the government's not going to shoot them down. And you say government, I'm talking about all the governments of the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because it would be futile. It would be like peasants throwing rocks at an F-16 jet fighter, for instance.
Right.
Okay.
And they're not threatening us in any way.
The phenomenon is moot, as they say.
Yeah.
There is a mundane threat. Tell me what's in your book. What are you talking about?
It's about my experiences with UFOs since 1961.
Is it a handbook how to see UFOs? Do you give tips there?
Well, I have the, how we found the area and all.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand there are several areas in this country where people go out just like we did every night and observe and take pictures.
Some can say Sedona, Arizona, Gulf Breeze. Some say the Nevada Desert. Some now say outside Salt Lake City to the west at Hill Air Force Base, Dugway Proving Grounds.
I've always heard up towards Lake Michigan, that area.
Right, the Great Lakes Triangle, right. That's
Yeah.
always been a hotbed
Yeah.
for UFO sightings. West Virginia had a spate of sightings in the
Yeah.
50s and 60s in that area of Virginia. So you don't think it's relative to what's underneath the ground. It's just that it's chance that they chose a specific area,
Yeah.
or they found interested people that are interested in them. For instance, you have that area in southern New Hampshire.
And I think, all right, now, for example, they're interested in things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in this area where we went out to observe, about 2 or 3 miles away, they're building a golf course. Every night the UFOs are out there looking over to see what's going on. And not too far from there, this farm decided to start growing all these fruit trees. And they had all this heavy equipment and everything, you know, they're planting acres of them. Well, we used to go out and watch the UFOs flying around the heavy equipment.
Let me ask you this. How do they eat? Do you believe in cattle mutilation? Do you think that's equated with aliens?
I don't know.
But
And I don't know.
You're open-minded to that, or you haven't done enough investigation such that you couldn't comment?
Well, I rode around with the police out in Colorado.
Okay, so you've been to the San Luis Valley.
I don't know where that is.
Yeah, it's okay in Colorado. So you were, yeah.
I've been,
Colorado
well, actually,
Springs, Denver.
I was out Crested Butte.
Okay.
I think that's supposed to be the highest altitude.
The highest alpine plain, right. So yeah, it sounds like you were at the San Luis Valley, which is a hotbed for cattle mutilation. So you're not sure as to if the two are equated, and the aliens have to eat somehow, right? Do they eat food?
I don't know. I don't know what they eat. But I know that, I rode around with the police out there looking for, they took me around, showed me this is where this cattles were mutilated, and how they had hired men to go out and protect the cattle tonight with their loaded guns.
And they were cookie cutter in size,
Yep.
laser precision. So you don't know what to make of that.
No, but somebody was mutilated. I know one thing. One farmer gave me a picture of a calf of his that had been mutilated. And I showed it to this friend of mine, a neurosurgeon, and he looked at it and he said, if you can find out who did that cutting, I want to go in business with him.
That's right, because whoever did it has to be one of the most foremost skilled surgeons on the planet, and you think that they'd want to hang out on their yacht at Miami Beach or play some golf in Hawaii as opposed to going out in sub-zero temperatures in a high alpine valley plain cutting up cows. So I want to ask you about crop circles. What's your take on crop circles? Are they man-made? Are they alien-made, or combination of the two?
They're alien, not UFO made.
They are.
I have a friend who just came back from England.
They are not alien-related.
Oh, I have here. Would you like to see them?
Yeah, are you saying, are they alien?
I got pictures of the new crop circles that were done in August.
Oh, okay.
They are fantastic.
Do you think that they are associated with UFOs?
They have to be.
Okay, they have
Nobody
to be.
on this planet could have the abilities to create them.
Okay. I've examined Doug Bowers and David Shorley are two hoaxers in England that started the crop circle, or started making crop circles in the late 70s, early 80s. They can lay claim to a majority of the crop circles, but not all of them.
No, these two guys, they're more or less hoaxes.
Mm-hmm.
They take a board and they...
Right.
But these, actually in the crop circles, the wheat is almost like it's braided.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just flattened. It's swirled.
Some people standing within them can feel, hear a hum. Others can put a compass over some sort of Geiger counter, and there are magnetic anomalies involved. Are you aware that there's sand circles have been found in the deserts of the Sahara, the Gobi Desert in China, and ice circles? In fact, an ice circle was found on the frozen Charles River in Medfield, Massachusetts, circa 1993.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah, ice circles have been found near the Ross Sea ice shelf in Antarctica. So that these are not just in the barley fields and cornfields of England. They are taking a place across many vast expanses of the globe.
I know there's been crop circles found on the West Coast.
Right, Washington State recently.
Yeah.
What's your take on, have you heard of black helicopters?
Yep. I filmed them.
Okay, could you elaborate, please?
Well, the one that I filmed, I have a picture of a helicopter pilot say They can't understand it because it's been modified in such a way that it should not be able to get off the ground.
The helicopter.
Yep.
San Luis Valley, back to Colorado, where the cattle mutilations occurred. That's a hotbed for black helicopters.
And that the police believe it's the black helicopters doing the mutilations.
You think it's somebody in those black helicopters?
Right.
Now the question is, are they government or are they aliens manifesting? Are they aliens manifesting themselves as black helicopters?
I don't know who they are, but they're not government. Why would they go around doing that?
Right, because they could have their own little farms and experiment on their animals to their heart's content.
Right.
So that would leave up an option. And Chris O'Brien, I made this inference to him. He's a researcher in the San Luis Valley. What if the UFOs could manifest themselves as black helicopters? Let's just say, if an incident...
That's it. See, now you're going to do a totally different area.
Oh, let's go. We're there.
I've got a picture that I took in daylight. I looked up, I was out in my area, and I'm with a friend, and I look up, and I saw a plane and a helicopter flying side by side.
Was the plane a C-130, had 4 engines on it? What type of plane was it?
Just a plane on a helicopter.
Okay.
And those two attracted my attention. And I got a Polaroid camera. I snapped the plane and helicopter. You don't see planes and helicopters flying side by side. I snapped the picture. And I got a disc and a flying barrel.
Wow.
Along with a plane and a helicopter. So lately, over the years, also I have a friend who filmed a carrier letting off, looked like small planes, like the old planes, like World War I planes. So I think something like 8 of them came out of the carrier.
And they looked like almost like rolled. It was biplanes.
All planes.
Interesting.
And so, and then
UFO.
also, yeah, and then also we had here what we call the crazy plane.
What's that?
It looks like a plane.
Okay. And
It will do things like it'll come right straight down from
here,
the
meaning
sky.
southern New Hampshire.
Yep, roaring, worse than 10 jets. Come right straight down, pointed at the ground, stop about 20 feet, flatten off, up, and take off.
Do you think that's an alien craft or?
I know it is.
Okay, sure. So
they're beginning to disguise themselves.
That's okay. So
They're beginning to look like things that were familiar to us,
right.
so that they can get in closer.
A good Chris O'Brien story was he had investigated this strange helicopter encounter of a family in Colorado, saw this strange yellow helicopter. And it's so expansive to travel in that helicopter, you wouldn't have enough fuel to go to the next depot. And so he's driving home and he's typing it up on his typewriter the next morning, and he looks up and he sees the same yellow helicopter 13 years later, the way they describe. Now, I want to get back to special operations groups. I mentioned them earlier. They emanate out of Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. They're trained there. They're dispatched, or I call them their nest, is at Eglin, Hurlburt Field. Black helicopters are shiny or flat black helicopters that are not registered with the FAA. They don't have any military numbers or markings, so they don't exist. You can fly at any altitude, anywhere you want. They also are accompanied by 4-engine planes called C-130s. They can be, the way I look at it is, it's the United States of America's way to check into the terrorist game unannounced. You fight terrorism sometimes, unfortunately, with terrorism. These are surgical teams that can get into an area, perform whatever duty they have to do with electrical intelligence or psyops against the enemy, and leave. So now for the aliens to manifest themselves, you have UFO sightings, and these special operations groups would show up later. So now it seems that the aliens may be, or so I've heard, manifesting themselves as these black helicopters, almost in a mocking manner. What do you think of that? To the point that here's your secret group, and okay, yeah, the UFOs come in and manifest themselves as black helicopters, because you're inferring that these UFOs have the capacity to manifest themselves as some of our sensitive aircraft. Is that correct?
I don't know. I do know this. I've talked with military. In war times, we used black helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after Vietnam, all the helicopters came back, and they were repainted to go to the different branches of government, the military that they've been assigned to. And there were no black helicopters. But I assume we probably had them when we attacked Iraq.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in other words, black helicopters are great. They're great instead of scrambling fighters to investigate UFOs. You can get a chopper up out of anywhere, get it to the area, investigate. They're usually a few days late, a few hours late anyways, and leave. But that you've seen you've heard of odd terrestrial aircraft that you and I know as terrestrial aircraft behaving in strange manners. Like you said, that this woman who saw this UFO releasing circa World War I vintage aircraft.
Yep.
It's a new phenomenon.
And she actually got some real good pictures of one of them, because one of the small planes flew right down towards her.
And it looked just like.
And you could see the two heads. You know, it had like the canopy, like the old planes had. And you could see the head, because you couldn't see the features or anything.
Do you believe that there...
And this was filmed in daylight.
Richard Hoagland, former NASA advisor, talks about the monuments on Mars, talks about structures on the moon. What's your take on that? Do you believe that there's ancient monoliths or structures on the moon? Are the aliens using that as a staging ground? What's your opinion on that? Richard Hoagland tends to...
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have any opinion yet on Mars.
Okay, on the face on Mars.
I think life could have existed on Mars.
But you do...
I think, I've read books, scientists, years and years ago, how when the planet Venus came in to our area, it went too close to Mars and flipped it over and wiped life out there.
Do you think the asteroid belt was a planet that exploded?
Could have been.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you think the astronauts encountered UFOs on their Apollo flights, their Geminis, their Mercuries, their space shuttle launches? We've seen the videos coming out. We've heard the fourth and fifth hand stories.
Well, I know Gordon Cooper filmed a UFO, a landed one, in Edwards Air Force Base.
Right, 1955.
Because he was here last year.
Oh, Gordon was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Now, when he's coming out and speaking, saying that he had an encounter. Edgar Mitchell is another one that...
I've done TV programs with him.
So you have two esteemed astronauts, and I believe, was it Mitchell that brought in Apollo 13? He steered it manually, which I thought was... No. Mitchell, I think Mitchell's craft, or was it one of the astronauts there, that we just... Cooper, I think it might have been Cooper, that actually steered his craft in, which was one of the greatest single-handed manual re-entries in the history of space.
I know it was Apollo 13.
Right, but...
Which is an unlucky number for them.
So you've got these astronauts saying that they encountered UFOs, and they've seen them, which means that we are being monitored. Our launches are being monitored.
Which also means the government is loosening their security on secret information.
Exactly, but when it becomes so compartmentalized that you don't know what the person next to you is doing, and they don't either, that it's bound to slip out. But if you break up the pieces of the puzzle and disperse them, it'll be harder for somebody to put together the pieces. But every once in a while, you link a few pieces, and there's a picture of what is actually happening. So there is a possibility then that these UFOs are monitoring our space flights. You agree with that?
Oh, I would assume they would be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you see do you see us going out into outer space or living in space at some time, colonized in space station? Or
maybe in 1 million years or so.
It's just too far to comprehend.
Right. It's way beyond our abilities at this time.
A number of global Mars surveyor craft we've lost. We just lost contact with another one. Do you think that that's just because we're building toys like Fisher-Price? Or do you think that they're being taken out by, as some people say, the great galactic ghoul or some sort of alien presence? Do you think that we're getting too close to Mars in a certain area that we're not supposed to see and they're being taken out?
Well, they seem to publicly announce why it failed. It was a mixture of something like measurements and the metric system.
That's 4 out of 5 probes we've lost.
I don't know.
So it's hard to speculate at this
time.
time.
Well, I don't know. I can't imagine UFOs attacking them. They aren't that important.
If these are our, do you think these aliens are our future? Say 25,000 years. Do you believe that they come from another system, obviously, or do you think that perhaps they're coming back in time and visiting themselves back? I'm striking all areas here that I've read about.
I think in time this world is going to be one world.
Mm-hmm.
And we won't bother with passports. We'll just travel anywhere we want to, and it'll belong to the people.
One race, the human race.
Right. And then, when we progress to that point, then we maybe can start thinking about going to other worlds. we got to learn to get along with each other here first before we go anyplace else.
That's right. Before we look to the heavens and decide what is right for the cosmos, let's settle our differences here on our own little mud ball.
Right.
Right. Well, Betty Hill, I want to thank you for taking the time to speaking here with me here. Fascinating interview, inviting me into your home. Betty Hill's new book, A Common Sense Approach to UFOs. Again, Betty has the book here. We want to mention how they can acquire the book one more time.
The price of the book is $15.95, and usually it depends on where they live, but usually I send it priority mail, which is $3. And the address is 953 State Street, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, 03801.
You got it. Live it, learn it, read it. Betty Hill, thank you very much for being our guest here tonight.
Okay. And now you can sign my. You can sign my guest book. And I gotta.
You are.
Oh, his. Oh, his, yeah. His. I love this.
Hold them up to the camera if you'd like.
These are some pictures.
I've got the camera running still if you'd like to hold them up.
Oh, I gotta go take a trip first. Here's a flying trash can.
The flying trash can. Let's hold
Who was it? One of the astronauts saw it.
Towards you, Betty. Yeah, that would be great. A flying trash can. You hold it right towards you.
Okay. I call it a flying trash can, but one of the astronauts saw the same shape out in space, and he called it a flying beer can.
Oh, okay. So, what else do you have there?
Oh, there's another. This is a disc. This little attachment here is a remote-controlled object, which they toss out and it flies around by itself. I don't know, it could be a listening device, something like that. And there's 7. And that's a very common pattern for them to fly in. I don't know if you can get these or not.
Sure, yeah. Great. They look okay. That's a very common.
Yeah, a very common pattern for flight. And then, oh, this one's huge.
Is that the outline of a craft?
This is the front, the lighted front. And I would say this one is about 1/4 mile wide.
Wow.
And then this one. This is a disc, lighted along the edges.
Mm-hmm. And these were all taken in this area?
Yep.
In your hotspot?
Yep.
That we never got you to disclose. All we know is southern New Hampshire. New Hampshire has an entire litany of UFO sightings.
Now, well, let me show you
what
these.
These glows, yeah.
These are very interesting. These are all my copies of my pictures.
Mm-hmm.
If you're too close to a UFO, this is what it does to your camera. You can't take a picture of it.
Wow.
You get all these lights. I mean, I assume this is different kinds of energies if we only knew how to analyze them.
And these were outdoors taken?
These were taken right in my front steps here.
And this
the UFO was coming up the street.
It was right up your street? Now, how long ago was this?
Oh, I don't know. I always think of everything in the 70s. See?
Wow.
Oh, this picture is very poor. Anyway, the craft came up the street. I'm standing on the front steps. And then when I went over the roof of the buildings across the street, and I filmed it. But this is a very poor picture of it. Anyway, it was a circular craft, round like a ball, and it had windows that were lighted. You could, almost impossible to see them there, I think. Yep. And then this here, UFOs quite often come in on beams.
Mm-hmm.
They'll come in, they might have 2 or 3 beams come in, and then as the crafts come in, then the beams disappear. That's the, this is, actually this one here, this is bright red. That's the way the pictures were duplicated. Here's a remote-controlled object. And this one is bigger, it's a perfectly round ball, and it's bigger than the full moon. Oh, that's some more from the too close. Yep. So, okay?
That's fascinating. That was great. Thank you very much, Betty. Appreciate it. And good luck with your new book. It's great. That's your first book, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I've written several articles.
But the first book.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Betty.
You're welcome.
That was great. Thank you.
God, that's the longest I've gone without
I
a
know,
cigarette in years.
I'm sorry. You are a champion as far as covering the phenomena. Let me tell you, you are so refreshing. Just some of your answers, and I like the way you
I never woke up and found any strange men in my bedroom.
you sock it to the other researchers, and you dispel a lot of myths. And
You owe me a copy of that tape.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. That was fantastic. That was great, Betty. And thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. It's a great interview. See my theory about them manifesting as helicopters? I mean, when I tell people that, you know, and I know special operations like the back of my hand, and there's some groups that special operations don't know, and they look like special operations. So
That's right.
that's atypical.
I'm the one that took this picture here.
Now you know.
Some houses hold memories, others hold something far darker. The Snedeker house in Southington, Connecticut, is one of the most infamous haunted houses in modern history. A case so disturbing that it captured national attention, inspired books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood horror movie. But behind the sensationalized retellings lies a chilling question. What really happened inside the Snedeker house? This is the true story of the family that lived there, the horrors they endured, and the terrifying mystery that remains unsolved to this day. A house with a dark past. In 1986, Carmen and Al Snedeker were desperate. Their teenage son, Philip, had been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and his treatment required frequent trips to the University of Connecticut hospital. To make life easier, they searched for a home closer to the medical center. That's when they found it. A large, affordable rental property with plenty of space for their family. It seemed like a blessing, until they learned the truth. The house had once been a funeral home. The basement, which the Snedekers converted into bedrooms for their sons, had once been where bodies were embalmed and prepared for burial, and although the funeral home had long since shut down, remnants of its past remained. The family discovered embalming tools, toe tags, gurneys, and even a blood drain in the basement floor. The landlord had never mentioned it, and by the time they found out, they had already settled in. At first, they convinced themselves it was just an oddity. Unsettling, yes, but nothing to fear. They were wrong. The haunting begins. The first sign that something was wrong came from Philip. At first, his behavior changed subtly. Mood swings, irritability, moments of deep silence. His parents chalked it up to the stress of his illness. But then, things took a darker turn. He began seeing shadowy figures moving through the house. He spoke of whispering voices that called to him at night. He told his mother he was being watched by something that wasn't human. Soon, the rest of the family started experiencing unexplainable events. Objects moved on their own. Doors slammed shut with no one near them. The air would suddenly fill with the scent of rotting flesh. Carmen and Al would wake up to find their beds shaking violently. Lights flickered, radios turned on and off by themselves, and a constant feeling of being watched settled over the household. But what happened next was far worse. Philip's possession. Philip's condition deteriorated rapidly. He became violent, lashing out at his family. He spoke in strange voices, using words that weren't his own. He told his mother that he could see the spirits of the dead, former workers and bodies that had once passed through the funeral home. One night, Carmen found Philip standing at the foot of her bed. His face was blank, his eyes dark and lifeless. He whispered, "They're coming." It was the final straw. Fearing for his safety and their own, the family had him committed to a psychiatric hospital. But even with Philip gone, the hauntings didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. Carmen's terrifying ordeal. Carmen became the new target of whatever dark presence lurked into the house. She described being held down by an unseen force, unable to move or scream. At first, she dismissed it as sleep paralysis, but the attacks continued, growing more intense, more physical. Then, one night, she claimed she was assaulted by an entity she couldn't see. According to her, she felt cold hands gripping her wrists and thighs, a weight pressing down on her chest. She struggled, but the force was too strong. The attack lasted for what felt like an eternity before the presence suddenly vanished, leaving her terrified and shaken. She wasn't alone. Al Snedeker also reported being touched and taunted by unseen hands. At night, the sheets would be ripped off their bed and they would wake up to deep scratches on their skin. The entity, whatever it was getting stronger.
Crucifixes on both sides of the door jamb that had been there for many, many years. They were discolored and you could tell that they'd been there for many years. They started disappearing one at a time. Most of the activity stayed in the morgue until those crucifixes disappeared. And as they disappeared...
That
scared the crap out of me.
How can that possibly have just happened like that? Are you okay, Carmen?
I'm fine.
It didn't hit you?
No, it just scared the crap out of me.
Something is really cold in this room. I want to get out of this room right now.
Okay. We're giving recognition. This kind of thing happens. The best thing to do is get through it as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And then everything will go back to normal.
The Warrens investigate. Desperate for help, the Snedekers turned to Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigators who worked on cases like the Amityville Horror. When the Warrens arrived, they immediately sensed a dark, malevolent presence in the house. Lorraine, a self-proclaimed clairvoyant, claimed she could feel the suffering of the spirits trapped within the home. According to the Warrens, the house was infested with demons. They theorized that the old funeral home had been a place of unspeakable evil, that embalmers had practiced necromantic rituals, desecrating the dead in ways beyond imagination. The spirits of those defiled bodies had never left, and now they wanted revenge. A full exorcism was performed on the house. The Warrens claimed that by the end of the ritual, the demonic presence was banished, shortly after the Snedekers moved out. Fact or fiction? As with many paranormal cases, skepticism surrounds the Snedeker haunting. Some investigators believe that the story was exaggerated or even fabricated, that the Warrens, known for sensationalizing cases, may have influenced the family's narrative. Was this a real haunting or just a story that got out of hand? Let us know in the comments. Let's check out a famous interview with the Snedeker family. Then you can decide for yourself if this was a real ordeal or a hoax.
You're probably saying to yourself about now, well, this story sounds crazy. But my guest today insists it's true. Meet Al and Carmen Snedeker. They are here with their son, Michael, and their niece, Kelly. Later in the show, we'll talk with neighbors, including one who now lives in the very same house the Snedekers claim is haunted. He says that Al and Carmen are making up the story. Carmen, we're going to start with you. You moved into this house in the first place because your son Stephen was in the middle of receiving treatments for cancer at a local hospital. And the house you moved into was a former funeral parlor. Can you take us through the layout of the house?
Yes, as you came in the front door, there was a beautiful wood entrance with an excellent hall stairway that went up to the second apartment. That's the apartment I saw first before I moved in. I didn't know it was a funeral home. When I came in the first time, the downstairs was full of workmen and woodworking things, of lumber and hammering things going on. So I saw the upstairs apartment. I didn't realize it was a funeral home. As you go through the hallway, to your left was what used to be the chapel, was our dining room. In the back of it was the kitchen. There was a back door. As you walked out the back door, there were French doors. If you'd go in those French doors, it led down into the basement or into our bedroom. When you went into the basement, there was the morgue and where they prepared the bodies. The hoist went up into our bedroom above us. There was a blood tank to the right of the staircase. And then as you walked through there was the sink where they flushed the blood and things of that nature, and they prepared the bodies, and there was makeup and wax and things like that in there. There were 3 coffin pillows. Then as you come through, there was a tool room where they kept the little head things, where they put the name of the person, little metal plaques. You went on through, that was the north coffin room. That's where my son Stephen slept. That was his bedroom. You made a right, you went into the south coffin room. That's where Michael slept. As you go up the stairs, you go directly into the bathroom. Back around, there's a U shape into a beautiful living room with a sunroom. There were over 22 windows. Then there were 2 more bedrooms. Kelly and my daughter and other niece slept in the other one.
Carmen, although your children told you they heard strange sounds and noises and they saw ghosts, you didn't believe them at first?
No, I didn't believe them. I didn't believe in ghosts. I thought that they were things of imagination. I'd always been taught that. My oldest boy, Stephen, came to me the day we moved into the house, and he said, "We have to leave here immediately. The house is evil. It's really evil. Something bad's going to happen if we stay." I told him that houses could not be evil because I didn't believe they could.
What changed your mind?
My mind was changed over a year later when Kelly and Trish moved in with us. One night after a date, Kelly came into the house.
Kelly's your niece?
Yes, Kelly is right beside me. She came in from a date, and she tried to go into her bed, and something started happening to her, and she came to our bedroom where I was sleeping, and she said, Aunt Carmen, come quick. It's coming again. It's happening again." I grabbed my Bible from the nightstand, and I'm saying to myself, I've got to find something to put all of these ghost stories to rest. I've had it up to here with ghost stories. I didn't believe in them. I'd never seen anything, and I thought it was all because it was a former funeral home.
Now, Kelly, you're the niece. You came to live with your aunt.
Yeah.
And you say you were molested by an entity. Tell me about that.
Well, it all started when I can't.
She came home from a date.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Kelly came in from a date, and she went into her bedroom, and she tried to lay in bed, and she felt something come up underneath the covers towards her, and it was pulling at her undergarments and touching her in her private areas. She reached over for her rosary, and the cross came off. That's when she got up and ran into the room with me. A few other things happened to her. I'll let her tell you about them if she can.
The covers would be pulling off the bed. There would be voices, a lot of scratching on the walls. The bed didn't always do it. It did it more in Aunt Carm's room than anywhere, but it would, like, breathe, kind of like.
Kelly, what did the apparition look like? Did it
It
you see
didn't
a full
have a
person?
form. It was just a black mass.
Just a black mass?
Yeah.
Was there a hand? You said you felt something.
I felt it. You couldn't see it. I couldn't see it because it was behind me, but it was like a huge, it was just freezing cold. It was like a hand on my back, and it would just like when I was laying on this side, and this bra strap would always be pulled down, and I always slept in my undercloak, my bra and stuff went out the bed. That's just, and it would be being tugged down, and you'd pull it back up, and usually, when you're laying on that side, that just doesn't happen. And I got up to get the rosary, and I laid back down in the bed, and when I did that, my hand, I was holding the rosary in my hand, and it was like something was, trying to open my hand up, and it would start pulling on my covers, pulling them to the floor. And then after that happened, I got up and ran into Aunt Carmen's room, and she got up to come in with me. She brought her Bible. This had happened before, something similar. And she didn't believe me. She'd just bring the Bible in, and she would sit down, and she would start telling me the Hail Mary out the rosaries and reading the Bible and trying to calm me and talk to me and tell me I was just having nightmares or something.
I truly didn't believe her. I thought that the older boy had gotten her all excited about the stories of the funeral home and the ghost he had seen. When I went into her bedroom, I sat with her and I was opening it and reading from the Bible, and she wrapped around me. She was so excited. "Can you feel it coming? Can you feel it coming, Aunt Carmen? It's coming." And I pushed her back. And the third time she did that and I pushed her back, I saw an arm, the knuckles, the joints, and the wrist go up under her long night shirt, up over her breast, and back through the wall. At that point, I realized something was going on. I grabbed her, ran into what used to be the chapel to use the phone, and there's where I called.
All right, Al, you say strange things were happening to you and Carmen at night when you were in bed. In order to fully understand, we want you to show us what happened. We have a bed here today that is about the size of the bed, which was in the house. So we're going to set the scene. Now, you're about ready to tuck in for the night when all of a sudden you hear music like this. What happened next?
Well, Sally, the music would wake me up at night. I'd be sound asleep. I would hear the music playing, and I would say to myself, what is that? And I would lie there for 5 or 10 minutes and listen to it. Along with the music, I could hear 3 or 4 voices. They were older men chatting back and forth, back and forth.
What did you initially think the music was?
It sounded like 30s music from an old Victrola player.
He thought someone was in the house when all of this was going on, and he...
I used to get up every night, go down the stairs. First couple times, I would just go down and start looking. But each time I went down, I started getting more and more nervous and afraid for some reason. I started bringing a baseball bat with me. I started going through the boys' room, through the coffin room area where the chain body lift was.
No one is playing the radio, and the boys are asleep, and they're in their
everybody
bed.
would be sound asleep. It got to the point where I got so afraid when I was going down there, I started bringing a gun with me. And one night I woke Carmen up. I said, Carmen, I said, I got to stop doing this. I'm afraid I'm going to shoot one of our children.
Wow. He was really afraid that one of the kids would be standing up in the room when he'd go around the corner, and he would fire because he was so frightened himself. And he'd come back up and to get into bed. Now, when we used to get into bed, it only happened to us not at the same... Yeah, we were never awake at the same time. But the bed would begin to vibrate. And it would be a gentle vibration at first, and it got worse and worse. There were other things that happened. The bed, as Kelly said, had a pulse and a heartbeat.
Like a heartbeat, yeah.
And when you were in your bed, it would come and lift the covers and tug at them.
But there was a pulse and a heartbeat in the bed.
In the bed, and you could feel it. Someone else could go up and touch it and feel it. People that had not lived in the house. And we had this thing that would walk around the bed. It had really small feet, like a cat. We didn't have a cat. It would walk around the bed, and if it sat down, it would be as an adult male sitting, the impression of the bed.
The feet were light, but the weight of what happened
The feet were about the size of this, a cat's feet.
Al, you said something else happened to you that is very difficult to talk about even today. Can you share it with us?
Yes. One night, we were lying in bed. Carmen had already had fallen asleep. I felt this strange sensation coming over my body. It started at my feet and started climbing up through my body. Before I had a chance to reach over to Carmen to tell her something was wrong, I was froze. I couldn't move. And then I felt this stinging penetration in my anal area. And I was trying to scream, to cry out to Carmen to help me somehow. And I couldn't move. After a while, I don't know how long, it had gone away. There was no more sensation. I woke Carmen up and I said, Carmen, I think I was just sodomized by this demon.
This happened to me as well, Sally. It was a tedious kind of pain that happened. It was horrible pain. It was so penetrating and so much pain. There was no pleasure in this. And when it would take me, sexually assault me, it would laugh it with such pleasure. It enjoyed what it was doing to me, and I was so terrified I couldn't move. It was the most crippling thing I've ever been through in my life, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Now, Michael, you actually saw ghosts? What did they look like to you?
It took different forms. When I seen it, I would see it in different shapes. The first time I seen the ghost, it appeared in cat-like eyes glowing up on the ceiling, looking down at my bed. And the second time I seen it, it appeared as my little sister. The lights were taken out of the sockets on the ceiling. And I looked over, because they were flashing on and off, and there was no bulbs in there. And I looked over, and it looked like my sister, and she was laughing at it when she was flicking off the switch like that. And then I got up to go over to her, and she went running up the stairs. And I went into the living room where my mom and cousin were, and I asked them if Jenny just came running through, and they said, no, she's been in bed all night. And I said, 5 minutes ago, she was down in my room turning on and off the lights.
And you knew that that wasn't so. Did it have a voice, any kind of a strange?
It had several voices. Sometimes it would take on the voice of one of the children to come into the room. It would say, Mommy, Mommy, and it would be the sweet voice of your child. And you turn, and there would be this dark presence of a smoke figure just standing there laughing at you. And then other times it had the deep, raspy voice where it would insult and shout profane things and insult you. It was horrible.
When we come back, we're going to hear more about this bizarre story, and we'll hear just how desperate the Snedekers were trying to get rid of the evil spirits. They called the neighbors, called the police, and no one was willing to help. But they did find a solution, and we'll find out what it was when we return. Family. Carmen says 4 years ago she moved into a house that was formerly a funeral parlor. And Carmen says it was haunted and terrible things happened to her and her family. Carmen, I have to ask you, why did you just pick up your family and leave?
Sally, that would have been the first choice we would have had, but every time we did leave the house, it would follow us. I'd go to work, and the computer system would go down, or the phone system would go down. The people at work are the ones that gave me the phone number to the people that finally helped me. My husband went to work. His car, he parked and went inside the building. As he did, the car started back up and drove into the building. We didn't want our family members harmed by whatever was harming us. It was bad enough.
Carmen, I'd like to ask you, how many children do you have, and were they all affected?
We have 4 children and 2 nieces, and everyone was affected, along with
And
some
where
friends.
are the other children now?
They're young. There's a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old that I want to protect, and the oldest one's in school in Massachusetts.
They were kind of scared or nervous, to be honest.
Oh, terrified.
One of them was given drugs or taken to a psychiatric hospital?
Yes, that was the oldest boy. I didn't believe that anything he was telling me was true. I asked his oncologist who had been treating him if that could be a side effect from the cancer treatments he was receiving. They said no, so I took him to a psychologist.
Was there any medical evidence that either of you had been raped? Did you go to a doctor and get physically examined?
Why would we? I mean, we couldn't see it. How did we expect anyone else to believe us?
But you felt a stinging pain?
It wasn't like a normal rape, not person-to-person type.
Carmen, there was one point where you say you actually were possessed by a demonic force, and You, Al, say you witnessed it. Can you tell us about it?
This was one of the most terrifying events that happened in the house. I've drawn some sketches, if I may. We had been outside just kidding around. The researchers were in the house, my husband, my niece, and upon going back to bed, I sat down and I was no longer in my room. I was in a dark room. I don't know if you can catch this on camera. I was in complete darkness. I couldn't feel the temperature of my skin. I couldn't hear myself speak. I couldn't see anything but blackness. I knew I was no longer in my room. The entity opened up a hole and he started shouting obscenities at me. And when I began to pray the Our Father, he got worse. And he said, there's no way you could possibly believe what you've been taught as a child. I went into this place. It was called Ithram, a desert road of hot tears, and I was taken down this road. These represent souls, lost souls. I could actually feel the emotion, the anger, the hurt, the desperation, the sadness. There were no positive emotions. They were all human, negative emotions. And they were palatable. They just went through my skin. I knew it. I felt such compassion for these souls. But I couldn't leave the road. I was warned against it. I was there for 8 hours.
Has there ever been any research or anything saying, you know, trying to find out who exactly these spirits were?
Yes.
Yes.
We had some researchers come in on the night that I discovered that there were other entities in the house. I called some people called the Warrens. Someone at work had told me that she believed the things my children were telling me was true, and she asked me to go to Ed and Lorraine's museum with her. She gave me their number to call and make an appointment. I never did. I just kept the number in my wallet. That night I called it.
And did they help you?
They stayed with us for 9 weeks.
9 weeks?
9 weeks, every night. Every night.
And there was also somebody else who went in and documented all this?
They're researchers. They had 3 researchers that came in the house and stayed 9.5 weeks. They worked during the day. They did not accept any pay for what they did for us. And they experienced phenomena from the very first night they walked into our house.
You know definitely that it is a male spirit?
No, there is no gender in the spirit's world. There's... These were called incubus and succubus, but I'll let the researchers tell you more about that later on.
Later, we're going to meet the Ghostbusters who helped Carmen and her family, but next, the neighbors we found while investigating this case who say, gee, they don't believe a word of the Snedeker story. Don't go away.
That you were molested. Now, were you ever molested outside of your home? Did they follow you? Like you said that they would follow you if you would leave.
One night I ran down the street with Kelly, being sodomized the whole way.
Whoa. Yes, you had a question.
Hi, I was wondering what the police thought when you told them that.
The policeman almost shot my bedroom door when the door began to open by itself when he was in there.
And your question?
Well, Sally, I'd just like to know, if they were molested in their beds, why didn't you just leave that next morning? You have children to worry about.
Exactly.
Where could we go?
Anywhere. Not just a matter of that. What about the fact that everywhere we went, it followed us. And the other outsiders, should we drag in our parents, our grandparents, our nieces and nephews? We had larger families.
Take a chance that it would happen to them?
Around this time of year, we do hear a lot of tall tales about ghosts, goblins, things that go bump in the night. So far today, we've heard some pretty horrifying ghost stories that our guests claim are no tall tales. They're true. Carmen says as soon as she and her family moved into their new house, which used to be a funeral parlor, strange things began to happen. So far, we've heard about the music in the middle of the night, the voices out of nowhere, and some pretty serious accusations, including rape and sodomy by an evil spirit, whatever it is. While we were investigating this story, we came across some people who live in the Snedeker's old neighborhood. And they say they have some serious doubts about the Snedeker story. In fact, they say the Snedekers are making the whole thing up. Meet Richard, Yvonne, and Jim. Richard, why don't you believe the Snedeker story?
Well, I think the most obvious reason for me was the inconsistencies in it. We were moving into the Southington area from another town, found the apartment. We liked the apartment. I mentioned it to some coworkers who work in that town and live in that town. And, of course, the whole haunted house story came out with them.
Now, you moved into their apartment after they left?
Correct, the same one they were living in.
Oh, okay.
When all this was supposedly happening. I think I researched it with my wife. We talked to people. As a matter of fact, the close relatives of yours told me that there was nothing to it, that you were making it up just for the money.
Could you tell me which relative you spoke to? Because I have very few relatives in the area, and I had a relative of mine contact me saying that people that were living in there wanted an exorcism.
Wanted us to come there.
When was this?
This was a year ago.
I was living
now,
there.
let me ask you, on the dining room floor, do you see 5 toes and a heel and an imprint in red? Because it was there and did not leave.
Floor.
Yes.
No.
Is it hardwood?
It's hardwood floor. There is no impression.
There was when I left.
I've been to every part of the house. There have been
Is the body lift still there?
The body lift is out now. It was there.
It was there when I moved in.
It did nothing. I have small children myself, as a matter of fact. I have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and I have seen nothing that.
Richard,
that
I really don't want any harm to come to you, but we did have an exorcism.
My question, I don't think I'm lucky though. My question, my response to this is, if the ghost followed you down the street, you were so concerned that the ghost was going to harm your relatives, your friends, then the house wasn't haunted. The ghosts were from you.
After you, that's right.
Because I have had nothing. I have not heard a creaking board. I have not heard anything that would suggest that that house is haunted whatsoever.
Let me talk to Yvonne.
Sally, can I just say one thing?
Obviously, the exorcism worked then. You're very lucky.
There was no exorcism.
I don't think there was an exorcism.
Here's the dig down 12 inches behind every corner of the house. 12 inches, there is an exorcism medal. And there are also other things that you can find there. There's all kinds in the storeroom.
I cannot give you. No, I talked
no
to
Catholic priest within like 100 miles of this place has ever set foot in your house since the last funeral was performed by the previous owners. You people say you didn't know that it was a funeral home. The picture that was supplied by whoever that was taken last year, the sign that says funeral home, is still on the front of the house. If they show the picture,
she was showed the top apartment.
Cover up.
They were
by
remodeling.
signs on the front door.
They got pictures. The bottom floor.
They got pictures of you in the newspaper, which they also showed. Right next to you, right behind you.
It's right there.
If you look right behind you on the picture,
it's covered up with plywood. It's covered up.
It was not covered up until this whole thing.
You did not live there when I did.
I
did not know.
I have been there 3 years, lady.
I have other witnesses that did say it was covered.
Why did this?
Nothing was ever said. Nothing was ever said until you got behind in your rent, and that's when it started.
No, you know what happened?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
You guys were both.
I have an attorney that will dispute that.
Yvonne, the landlord, you sent a check.
My
never
question
got there. You could never come.
Okay, my question was around the same kind of thing. One, it sounds a little bit dramatized by the wife. The whole idea of the ghost and the spirits and everything. It sounds somewhat dramatic. I've heard people talk about ghosts and spirits, and I'm not saying that that can't happen, but it just sounds very, very dramatic.
It didn't happen here.
The way that you're explaining it. The other thing is I was wondering if you, one, if you have a book out, and two, if you were either behind in your mortgage or your rent. Because that could be cause for the dramatization.
No.
Or that
no, that's not true.
No, we were not behind in our rent.
Yvonne, you were saying it was for money. Why?
Yes, that's what it is. Even the landlord said they got behind. He never had a problem until they got behind in the rent. Then all of a sudden...
The landlord knew there was a problem with that house.
No, the landlord didn't know.
Wait a minute. If the landlord said there was a problem in the house, there was
his daughter.
There was a lady living upstairs
Sally.
in the house. The whole time this was going on, there was an apartment upstairs. This lady got disgusted. She got moved out because she was disgusted with all the publicity that was going on.
What she said, she experienced.
She
come to me and talked to me. Yes, she did. You were not there. You
I've been in that place.
She was there.
The researchers.
Yes.
And she allowed the priest in.
So why did she tell the TV people that nothing happened? Why did she tell us that nothing happened? Why did she tell the newspaper that nothing happened?
She told me she had a reputation to oppose.
When I took this rent, I work at Food Mart, and Father Kabbalah, who's been a priest in the Immaculate Conception Church
in Southington,
he's the one that told us forget
about it.
25 years, and I told he was a friend of mine, and I said I'm moving in the Hallahan house. He said, Yvonne, there was never anything there.
That's baloney.
And I said, well, if there is, they're going to have to learn to live with me.
We went to him
and he said,
we talked to him.
my
He said
money's
there was
on you,
nothing there.
Yvonne. Those were his exact words.
Sure.
I'm
There's a
one
lot
of
of
the
money
neighbors,
in Southington, that's why.
and I don't believe in ghosts until some of this occurred. When I came home from work one night, I visited my neighbor next door. Her name was Joan, and I was very set back with the fact that all of a sudden her kids had crucifixes on, and she had crucifixes all over her house. And I asked her what the problem was, and she was extremely upset. At this time, she didn't want to tell me, and she was, finally, I pried it from her. She had said to me that she had been in the Snedeker house. While she was there, she had been in the cellar. In the cellar, she had this very strong, pungent odor that made her very, very sick. She said she felt like throwing up and had to get out of there. Another time, on another occasion, she was sitting talking to Carmen. I believe it was in her dining room. I'm not 100% sure. It's the dining room or the kitchen. And she says while she was sitting talking to her, she felt something bite her or sting her on her backside or the thigh of her leg. And it was extremely painful. When she looked down, there was absolutely nothing there.
So you believe the Snedeker story because your friend believes it?
Well, I'll tell you, I was uncomfortable with things I saw. I did hear that one of the priests from one of the churches did go in there, and he did not believe what had gone in, but I did see other priests go in and out of there. I will be honest to say what I did see. And I did not experience anything other than that.
But your friend did?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm also a neighbor, and Joan and her husband were to our next door neighbor's house for a pool party when we were there. And when Joan went into the house to tend her babies, her husband said that there had been some funny things going on and that he was concerned for his wife. Well, this was in July. We had been hearing odd noises about 3 o'clock in the morning. So I decided to put a journal next to the bed and write down what went on during the night.
So you're a neighbor who everything that happened at night you would document?
Right. And I discovered that there were usually things going on in the neighborhood that explained the things they put in the newspaper.
Such as?
Oh, when the chains would rattle. One time at 3 o'clock in the morning, a car, in fact, there were 3 cars this particular night, the noise woke us up. And they would hide in the shadows of a tree down the street, and then they would come driving by. But if anything else came by, they would take off very fast, like they didn't want to be seen. One of the trucks had a bad muffler, and it really rattled our house as well as anybody else around. There were chains dragged.
So you're saying that
when heavier trucks went down the road, around that time some repairs had been done in the road, and heavy trucks would come down, and when they'd hit this repair in the road, it would rattle all the houses around us.
Excuse me, I don't mean to be disrespectful.
Baloney. How can
I
a
like
car make
this
that
woman.
kind of vibration?
But what we experienced was not a traffic problem. It was in the house. The floor would flutter. What about the covers coming off? What about the sodomization? What about the apparitions my children
saw? The whole
point, though, Sally, the whole point with this is, I have a 7- and a 6-year-old home. They have 4 kids or 5 kids that were in the house. If the board creaked in the house, I'd have my kids out of there that night. I don't care if I had to sleep on the street or in the car, in a local motel. You're going to tell me that you experienced all this and you kept your kids there for 2 years?
Oh, we didn't.
That's ridiculous. Financially, I'm not financially well off, but I'll sleep under
The priest they named in the newspaper as having come in and blessed the house and worked with them did not go into that house.
I'm sorry?
He had not been in that house since Mrs. Hallahan's funeral.
Who?
Priest.
Mrs. Hallahan is when that article was in the newspaper naming
Well, you call the archdiocese and you'll find out.
You should have cleaned your binoculars.
There is the sign that says Hallahan Funeral Home. This is a dated newspaper picture.
Ma'am, I hate to tell you, but it was covered up
with a light over
by plywood when I lived in that house and when I looked at it.
Not when you got there. It was not covered up till after it all started.
It was not.
That's wrong.
Next, we're going to meet the real-life Ghostbusters, who Al and Carmen say saved their lives when, along with a priest, they performed an exorcism in their house. See if we can figure out who the priest was. Take a break. and Carmen and their family about a chilling story. They wrote a book about it called In a Dark Place, the story of a true haunting. And they wrote this book along with Ed and Lorraine Warren, who have been with us before. They are the professional Ghostbusters, who Al and Carmen said saved their lives. Ed, you both launched an investigation into the house, and you discovered a very shocking thing that actually happened in the funeral parlor involving the bodies. What happened?
Well, we feel through our investigation that necrophilia, or abuse of corpses, had occurred in that home. Not necessarily by the undertaker. It could be anybody that went in there. Now, this case is not as isolated as these three people would have us think. We have over 70 cases very similar to the Snedekers. And remember that the church was involved in this.
Who was the priest? Everyone seems to have a disagreement.
We can tell you that the chancellery was involved. The priest that was involved there was a Father A, who was on 2020. And there was also 3 other priests, and this can be borne out through the official records of the chancellery in Hartford.
Yes.
How about a name? Just one name.
Father A is a name I give you. I don't have to give
a name, a full name.
I can prove.
These are secret things. We are Catholic,
if it's
and we
secret,
respect.
you're sitting here talking about being raped and sodomized by some sort of entity, but you won't give a name.
It was all backed up.
I'm telling you what happened to me. I'm not telling you. You gotta believe me.
We had investigators.
I'm telling you what
happened.
Were
you in the house?
No, I've been standing. I lived across the street before you people moved in.
Were you in the house?
Still lived there.
One of the ones that came around the house go boo boo through the window.
No, once you guys started doing this and it got to the paper.
Sounds like something you do.
Oh, very likely.
You're probably one of the guys I chased down the street.
I'd like to know how much you
Why would I run all the way down the street?
Especially you are getting paid off by the landlord to do this kind of stuff. Because you know
how much money are you making today?
You know as well as we do that what went on in that house actually occurred. We have the proof. We have people out here, investigators, who went through the same things as the Snedekers.
Ed?
I don't know what happened in the house and what didn't, but I lived next to the house for over 25 years, and I haven't been in there in over 15 years, but I do know that when they moved into the house, there was no sign that said Hallahan Funeral Home. The sign exists. It is, you know, to the right side of the door, but it was covered with plywood for years now. It's been covered up ever since the Hallahans moved out. It does not say Hallahan's Funeral Home on it anymore. And people moved into the home after the Snedekers left, and left very quickly after they did, before they moved in.
Okay, so there was an interim family that you think was disturbed too. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I have a question.
Jeff's another neighbor.
As you know, well, as you said before, your son had cancer, and he was taking many drugs.
Yes.
Did he or did he not tell you that he was also taking other illegal substances?
I'm aware that he did take other illegal substances.
He used to come over to our house and tell us that whatever we wanted, we could get and whatnot. He also...
I don't know what he told you, and I'm not aware of his teenage boyhoods, but I did take him to a psychologist, remember, and I did have a great deal of interest in what happened to my son, and he has grown up a great deal, and he told the psychologist, and to this day will still tell you, there were ghosts in the house.
But how
I think that these are all very contributing factors to why the phenomena was as intense as it was in that particular home.
Maybe
but realize
the ghost didn't like the use of drugs. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Drugs heighten the sensitivity. We know that when a person takes drugs, they're almost in the same state as a clairvoyant. But if you ask the gentleman who's sitting right over there, who spent 9 weeks in the house, what he had also had happened to him, similar attacks.
Where's the gentleman?
Right there.
Yes. What happened to you?
We were there for 9.5 weeks trying to help Carmen and Snedeker. When we go in on these cases, we have to document...
Who's we?
The researchers. I work with Ed and Lorraine doing their investigating. I'm one of the persons that was in there for the 9.5 weeks. I'm amazed at hearing all these people that weren't even in the home. You weren't there. You weren't witness to it. A neighbor sitting here with a book, a whole journal, stating on what took place in this case. She documented things around the clock. Why didn't you come over to see if you could help the family? Why don't you see if you could offer some help? You're saying there was no priest there. I know there was priest there. The Roman Catholic Church was involved with this. Now you want us to turn around and give you the name of the priest. He prefers to stay anonymous.
They said was there.
No,
he
you
said
don't.
he was not there. I said I have the newspaper clipping with his name
I've never
in it.
publicized
And he
one
said
time.
that he was not there. But
Can I see it?
Published. They also published that they were not writing a book and were not going to write a book.
We weren't at the time, lady.
We
Well,
were
you
approached
sure
2 years
did.
later. We insisted that it would be good for them to write a book because people like these out here would know that there is help for them if this ever occurred to them.
Sally,
you know,
I have to be
This journal around the clock, but I have
I made a
license
journal
numbers,
too, but I didn't bring it
descriptions of
with
the
me.
vehicles, and
It's on
when
a
kids
computer
were
disk.
pestering you, yelling in your windows, we called the police. The Poolers called the police. Other neighbors called the police.
I know.
And we
I have
caught
respect
kids
for that.
messing around the house.
Yes, and I appreciate that. I have
So then
great
you know what we
respect
went
for
through.
you.
Carmen, let me ask this woman.
it?
Let me get this woman's opinion.
I'd like to know why you think that they would fabricate something so absurd to get money when there's other ways of getting money. And I also don't think it's right that you demean their son for doing drugs. There are a lot of kids who have problems, and it doesn't happen just in people's houses who supposedly have drugs.
Okay, answer.
The point I was trying to make was that some of the drugs he was taking would allow him to see things.
Hallucinogenic?
Exactly. LSD.
But supposedly it was not only one son who saw it, it was the whole family.
That's right.
Just because one son is doing drugs does
Now
not
we
mean
were
the
all
whole
on
family is going to be
LSD?
affected by it and see it.
What about my three?
Okay, neighbors.
Sally.
Do you want to answer? Go
I
ahead.
was just going to, he said what I was going to say. You know, you take a lot of drugs, you start to see funny
The whole
things.
family was on drugs?
My 3-year-old
Come
son
on.
was
Philip was
You're
not
little
there
kids.
the whole time. He wasn't there. He was put into...
Do you know that the priests who went into that house had experiences so bad in their own rectories that they wouldn't even go back into that house again.
Sally,
And the home was exercised.
Let me take, let's get to Lorraine. We'll take a break and we'll be right back.
Who you are, and you...
Who is a skeptic on this whole matter? Joe, you say the investigations the Warrens conducted is baloney. Why?
Well, I've investigated haunted houses for some 20 years and a professional
Is there
psychologist.
such a thing?
Pardon?
Is there such a thing?
I've not met a house that I thought was haunted. I think the Warrens have never met a house that they didn't think was haunted.
I think that you are mistaken.
I was
You know
on the
that
show
we
with
have
this man
to-
once before.
Wait a
It's
minute.
my turn.
You made a statement.
I've heard that you were a
You have a
loudmouth who
statement.
shouted people down. Just give me my chance
No,
to
I
talk.
won't give you a chance.
You did that to me last show we
say
were
a bunch
on.
of lies.
Joe,
We
I'll
have
give
the
you your
evidence, We have the
chance.
proof.
You're a loudmouth, Warren, and
No,
we
you're
all
the
know, we all
loudmouth.
know it, but if you'll just let me finish.
When you're concerned, I'm a loudmouth.
Go ahead, Joe.
Try to
You
show
haven't heard
a little
Joe,
class.
I
You're
don't
on
have a
national
lot of
TV.
time.
No, I'm not going to
Just-
give class to somebody who's
Ed,
sitting here.
let
You'll
Joe,
have nothing but lying.
Ed, let Joe just explain
Be careful who you
point
call
by
a
point.
liar.
Well, what would
Go
you do
ahead.
about it?
Guys, Joe, point by point.
Yes, one thing that the houses that sincere people report that they think are haunted usually follow certain patterns. This is a hodgepodge of the sort of ghost tale, poltergeist, part demon, part
you
this,
there?
part that.
Were you there?
We saw a similar pattern with the Amityville Horror, a case that the Warrens thought was genuine.
We didn't
It
think,
turned
we know.
out it turned out to be a blatant
Nobody
hoax
ever proved that.
concocted over
Nobody
several
ever
bottles
proved
of
it.
wine.
Can
the
you
evidence,
prove it?
yes, I
No,
can
you
prove
can't.
it. Yes,
You
I
cannot
can.
prove
It's
it.
been proven.
No, it has never
The
been
evidence
proven.
is very clear in the case of the Amityville Horror.
No,
And the whole
no way.
packaging of this story, the book says it's for Halloween release. The book was written by a professional fiction writer who writes horror stories.
Joe,
This
does the
whole
church-
packaging is a
does the-
crock.
Joe, does the church admit to exorcism?
He's an atheist. How would he know?
According to a newspaper article that I have, the Bridgeport newspaper, the diocese refuses to confirm that they had any exorcism there.
It wasn't
if there
done by
was,
the
if
operative
there
Sally,
was
I
an
have a
exorcism,
tape of
I
an
don't understand
exorcism
why
from a
there is
priest.
any reason why they can't
wasn't
come out
done
and
for
say so.
Bridgeport.
We've
I don't
had
understand
priests
the
on
need
the
for
show
the
when we've
secrecy.
talked about exorcism.
If I
Take a
can
break.
prove
We'll
that
be
there
right
was an exorcism,
But the sheer fact that this family, in their hearts and in their minds, believe that this happened has to be overwhelming. And my heart goes out to you, whether it happened or not.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Well, I really feel like the only thing missing from your description of your first trip into the house is a corpse. I mean, blood on the walls and wax and makeup. And you also sound like you're reading a script. I'm not saying spirits and ghosts don't exist, but you sound so rehearsed.
I'm sorry. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I was wondering, you've been talking about two different kinds of ghosts coming in. Are they either male or female, or is it always a male that's in your home?
No, ghosts have no gender, I don't think. I'm not sure, but I don't believe they have a gender.
Yes.
I would like to know if you bought this house by a real estate agent, and if this real estate agent ever told you anything.
It was rented, and no, they did not tell us anything.
Question.
Yes, I'd like to know if y'all still being haunted by these ghosts.
No, we're not. The exorcism apparently worked. Our audience does not believe. Thanks to my guests, and whatever you believe about the story, the book is worth picking up. It's called In a Dark Place, The Story of a True Haunting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Some members of our audience will receive, and a promotional fee has been provided by...
If you love stories of real-life hauntings, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more terrifying tales. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.